Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for tuning in to Just Another Messenger. I am your host, Tamara L. Now, I am very excited about tonight. This is our third installation of Just Another Messenger, where we dive deep into thought-provoking conversations of history, language, culture, current events, personal growth, and everything in between. Now, each episode going to bring you a fresh perspective of life's complexities with engaging discussions that challenges the status quo and inspire meaningful dialogue. Now, whether we're going to explore social trends, tracking mental health topics, or sharing inspiring stories with everyday people, just Another Messenger is here to spark conversations that matter. Now, join us for insightful chats that go beyond the surface. We're going to dive deep tonight. We have a wonderful guest here before I bring him on. Now, we're going to offer a blend of information that's going to be very inspiring, helpful, historical, and a little bit of humor along the way. So subscribe now to Just Another Messenger and be a part of the conversation. You don't want to miss this. Now, as a disclaimer, the views, opinions, and thoughts are the protective expression of Tamara L. for storytelling purpose and does not provide statutory counseling of any United States color of law jurisdictional proceeding. Now, I'm going to go ahead and bring our brother into the studio. I am so delighted to have him here this evening. Let me see. We're going to go ahead and add him to the stage. Good evening.
Peace and light. Let me take these off my eyes. There you go. Peace and light. How you feeling?
I am wonderful. I am wonderful. I am so excited about tonight.
Absolutely.
Now, I started this journey. I came back. Some know me from years ago. Was starting a civic organization up in Wilmington, Delaware, and some are new to my presence. So I've been offline for like 2.5 years. Actually, the last time that we met, where you invited me to the conference where I spoke at the conference back in January 2022.
Oh, in
I think,
Jersey.
yeah, in Jersey.
Yeah.
That was phenomenal. That was great.
Appreciate it.
that
That was actually my second time hosting one of those. I did the first one down in Norfolk, Virginia the year prior. So thank you for joining us on that one in Jersey, though. Looking to do it again at some point next year.
I know. Look, I'm back home in Atlanta.
Oh,
I'm
you
back,
in the A?
I came back home. I came back home in May. No, June of 2022. So it's been a lot of things going on in my life personally, get some things together, helping out with family member, health wise, my parents, and just getting all that stabilized. So yes, I've been back home since June of 2022. So I kind of stepped offline for a while. And a lot of people kept, oh, when you get back on, when you get back on. I was like, oh no, there's so many different podcasts out there. And I took a year just to evaluate what's being discussed, and I was like, nothing. Hardly anything. It's like only a small handful that is providing information. I'm gonna partially introduce you. I know you as Jacoby Ponder, Minister of Information, as seen on Crom TV. Give our listening audience some more information about you.
Oh, for sure. So it's me, M.O.I. Misinformation. Yeah, I've been rocking with Crumb for a long time. The people may or may not know Crumb used to be my student a long time ago. And the brother has been doing great work over the years, and we just kind of stay connected and always do joint ventures together. But I have my own YouTube channel, Misinformation. I'm on TikTok, jumping like Jordan over there at the Misinformation, also on TikTok. So just I'm here, man. I've been through various schools of thought. THOUGHTNTHOT schools of Tahuti.
Yes,
been through several schools. So anywhere from the Masonic Order, active member of the Masonic Order, both Scottish Rite and Prince Hall, 32nd, 40th degree, 90th degree.
Above freezing.
Yeah, the ancient Hermetic, which is crazy because an actual square is 90 degrees.
Yes.
So that Morris Science Temple, my founder member of Morris Science Temple number 14 out of Virginia Beach. I've sat in the Masjid, I've sat with Hebrew Israelites. I kind of went through all the schools of thought as I mentioned, and collectively just kind of do my own research over the past 13 to 15 years. I've been really dove in this information. So glad to be here to impart some things on you guys.
I know the information is just amazing. When I got back on here, I just really wasn't, I was trying to figure out which direction to go, right? I was
Okay.
like, one of the things that was really disheartening is to see and hear the lack of information coming across the spectrum,
Yeah.
in a way of truth, of
Yeah.
enlightenment.
Yeah.
It was more so, I'll say it was a dumbing down of America that I was seeing.
Yeah.
And that became like very disheartening to see a lot of that going on. And I was like, man, and I remember sitting at the table and I was discussing it with my mom. And I was like, I just don't know what to do. And she was like, teaching is your gift. And that's what, that's what you're here for. And she was like, you're just another messenger. And I was like, got the name.
Come on now. Come on now. Mama knows what you're talking about.
Yes, right, exactly. And one of the things I ponder over the question is, why is history so important? I know you hear a lot of talk about current events and what people have going on in their life personally, as far as people of a higher celebrity, they call them a celebrity status. I don't adhere to any of that, but they're just more so in public view. And that's just not my lane. You know what I'm saying? I know just yesterday there was a vote of confidence that took place where the people in this society has spoken. They chose to elect or select, Donald Trump as the 47th United States gatekeeper for the colonial jurisdiction. We got to put it in
you better talk that talk.
We got to put it in the context what it is, You got to understand the context here. And that's one of the things that's very important, because a lot of times the truth is like hidden in plain sight. It's right there in your face. And a lot of time for our people, it's hard for them to understand who they are and what they belong to. So one of the things that's very important to me is, why is history so important? Like for me, I see history as important because it's the foundation of today and tomorrow's journey. Like it's just not historical events. It's today and tomorrow's journey. And it also helps to identify those mental struggles, which creates those pathways towards our liberation. It helps to identify them. Now, one thing I would tell anybody, if you don't remember who you are, you sure don't have a chance of understanding or knowing if there's anything worth fighting for. One of the things that colonial British Americans, aka Europeans, they understand the fight. They understand the fight daily. They understood the fight in their casting of their vote. They understood the fight. So we have a misguided understanding about what that fight entails, and also history aids to release the pressure to conform to certain ideologies that just no longer vibrates with us. And one of the things I want to touch on is, I started off like in reparation, because that was like one of the topics that was just chirping. Reparations.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, now I know reparation is so misunderstood in our community, because one of the things that's not talked about is the contract, the status of the migration, such as what status were the people in at the times these contracts took place. You have the indentured servant contract, you have the immigrant contract, you have the immigration contract out of one nation state into another. This is not talked about and discussed. Then you have the asylum seeker and the refugee. Our people are only thrust into the slavery aspect of that contract. Let's still say contract. So yeah, so let's get into that. I know from my first episode, it's titled it's called the reparation scheme in the Black community. And my second episode last week was titled the Anglo American Agenda, So the founding fathers are founding thieves. And I say, this is a great way to connect all this and keep the segue going. And one of the things I know that you're touched on, because I am a student of Minister of Information, I am a student of Crime TV. And one of the things I was so excited about having you here this evening is to touch on the Black nobility and their connections to the colonial machine. So I'm going to yield the floor and let you take it from there.
No, and please, I definitely want you to engage and ask questions, because that's what keeps me going. One of the downfalls of knowing a lot of information is you have to me personally, I have to constantly be engaged on questions. Otherwise, I just go off the rails because there's so much information.
You know how we get lost in the books. We get lost in the papyrus.
It's a ton of information. And before I proceed, we do a thing over on the network where we shout out the and what I was doing, I was text blasting everybody over on Crumb TV and my network to come join us with the link, whatever the case is. So I see High Priest is in there. There's another dope gentleman I brought on my platform with Crumb TV. He's on every Sunday, and his cohort, his counterpart, is on every Friday for Soul Sister Friday.
Oh wow!
And I would love to invite you on there to join her for a session. She's a high priestess, and he's a high priest. He gets into the gematria with the names and breaking the names down, whatever the case is. And then somebody's in the chat. I see Solo 5000 is in the chat also. Peace and love to Solo 5000, and I'm pretty sure others will join us along the way. I want to go back to visit something you talked about with the reparations piece. Bruce Lee in the chat, he just joined.
All right.
I'm saying there. Hey, brothers, make sure y'all subscribe to the sister channel and support her for sure.
Yes, please. We're just getting started here. Just Another Messenger is not monetized and will not be monetizing on YouTube. So I know I'm going to put my banner up for support, to where if you want to support the channel, where you can go to support the channel, and that's at via CashApp at Just Another Messenger, as well as you could donate there. And you please subscribe, like, and share on YouTube at Just Another Messenger. It's free to click and just subscribe. We're all in this message sharing tribe together. And if you'd like to email me, you can email me at justanothermessengerpodcast@gmail.com. And I know our good brother's going to put his wonderful information up there so we can have that as well.
Absolutely. Another thing that I'm starting to do also with my channel is I bring in the high priest, the brother in the chat over there, and as I go through the historical monologue, the brother is using the gematria. And he's dialed in gematria with certain parts of history, and he's pulling up current history. For example, we was going over. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Serapis Bay. Serapis Bay ended up being the. Are you familiar with Serapis?
No, I'm not. Enlighten me.
Okay, yeah. So Serapis, if I pull it up real quick, Serapis was a entity that was created by Ptolemy.
Okay.
I'm trying to pull it up real quick. And Ptolemy was one of the Egyptian rulers after the exodus of Alexander the Greek. And what this gentleman ended up doing was he created an entity by combining the two deities. He used Apis. I'm gonna share screen for a second. You can see it. Bring everything into.
Okay, so I think yes. So the Serapis was the entity before they brought in Cesare Bagora, right?
Well,
am I along the right line?
Ptolemy.
Gotcha.
Ptolemy brought in. You mind if I share screen? You get share screen for me on your side.
Wait a minute.
There you go. So Serapis was a Greco-Egyptian deity that was popularized by the Greek pharaoh Ptolemy. Okay, so Egypt actually went through a 380-year, 400-year period where the Greeks ruled Egypt. That's why a lot of the art, it looks Eurocentric. The Greeks actually ruled Egypt, and Ptolemy I sought up this deity named Serapis Christos. It says here, Serapis was a combination of several Egyptian Hellenistic gods, including Osiris, Apis, Zeus, Helios, Dionysus, Hades, Asclepius Serapis was worshipped as the god of the sun and the underworld, fertility, healing, and divine majesty. This is Serapis. This was an actual deity. From Serapis Christos, you get Christ. And even in 3rd century BC, you get into people known as Christians who were
Gotcha.
devoted followers of Serapis. Now, the caveat is, how do you get Christians before Christ is born? This is
Hmm.
BC, right? Now, his son comes along, Ptolemy II, sets up the clergy of Jewish scholars to publish what's known as the Septuagint, or the Latinized version of, I'm sorry, the Greek version of the scriptures, the Bible that we know today, that was reinterpreted later by Desiderius Erasmus in 1516. So this is the Christendom. This is the beginning of Christendom, not Christianity. Christianity and Christendom are two different things. Christendom is the conquesting, it's the Christian conquistadors of that era, all the way through the time of Constantine, who sought up the Ecumenical Council meetings, which gave you the Council of Nicaea 1 and 2, the Council of Ephesus, the Council of Chalcedon, which creates this fictitious entity named Jesus the Christ out of Serapis Christos. So we looked up Serapis Christos in the Gematria, good brother high priest, and Kamala Harris name came up. And yeah.
I'm not surprised.
And it's linked to this deified entity of sorts, which we know that her entire name represents a deity of India anyway. I think it's an evil laughing entity of India anyway.
Okay.
So anyway, that's kind of what we've been doing. The brother high priest and myself is kind of, not only I'm going through the history, but then he'll go through and punch it in through the Gematria, which is the codex, if you will, for the Jewish language, which gives out what it means now. So we will put in a historical reference, such as Serapis Christos. It calculates the numeric value of her name and spits out.
Right.
Well,
And numbers are so important. What people must realize
absolutely.
that those numbers deal with the frequency and vibration of the universe. So it's very important to understand that frequency and vibration, because that can either cause a calamity or it can cause balance, within a society. So I'm loving this. I'm loving that the gematria is also being utilized to have the explanation of the
Absolutely.
historical understanding that's connected to today's current events.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when we talk about reparations, I think our people, well, you said a couple different things. The
Mhm.
reparation piece, first of all, we have to understand what reparation was. I think a lot of us, including yourself, we know about the Emancipation Proclamation, right? Which didn't do anything. If anything, it should have been called the Liberation Proclamation, not emancipate. Emancipate simply means transfer of property. And we know that those properties were transferred from the plantation to the state, making them wards of the state in that time. In fact, Lincoln deemed those people at that time contrabands of war.
Yes.
And being their contrabands of war, they're treated like as such, right? So Black folks did receive reparations already. There was a couple different owners, shouts to the chat, man. Pen and paper gang coming in.
Yes.
There was a few people who actually received reparations, monetary assets from the government. There was an opportunity, I want to say in 1863, 62, Lincoln issued what was called the Emancipation Compensation Act. And the Emancipation Compensation Act allowed property owners to fill out a petition and lay a claim. And a few Black people did receive reparations already.
See, I think you're gonna have to rewind that part for the
Okay.
people in the back to understand that little portion right there. To understand that reparations is already has been extended out.
Yeah.
So this
It has.
argument about reparation is like a mute argument.
Yeah. I mean, I think our people just, a lot of people in the past 6 to 7 years, when it comes to history and information, especially with things like TikTok going on, our people are just excited to put out the information first.
Right.
They don't care what it is. Like, they the first one to say it, whatever it is, without doing research. A lot of our people now don't read. Um, they don't read. They don't research textbooks, anything like that. They receive downloads now from the ether and the soul plane, and I call them, excuse my language, I call them a bunch of the females are just fairies. You know, those are the ones with the waist beads and the stones and all the copper on their face. If I offend anybody, I apologize, but this is what my perception is. A lot of the brothers are on social media with their shirts off, and they all taking Assawat root and all kind of stuff, and it's receiving downloads. No research at all going on.
Interesting.
No research at all going on. But this is a younger generation though that are doing this, and they're popularizing this activity. But when you sit down and have a conversation with them, and you ask for dates, and I teach, you know, all my people, all of my disciples over on the network and the master students from Crumb TV, I teach them to talk in time and space. When it happened and where it happened is so important. Even when you talk about the out of Africa theory or the transatlantic slave trade or any of these notions that we associate ourselves with. And this is Africans in America history, not African American history. This is Africans in America. And I can show you who those Africans are who came to America. People like Sojourner Truth, who's an African. Harriet Tubman, who's also an African, and the first Black slave owner, Anthony Johnson, who's also an African from Angola. These are not our people. They came from Africa over here, and that's the Africans in American history. Our history is a little bit different from their history. But because we don't know a lot of this stuff, we are prone to make remarks such as, you know, the Europeans came over here and did the colony, and I'm asking you a question, who came over here?
Yeah, absolutely.
When did they come over here? Right. And when you start asking those tough questions, everything gets quiet.
Right. The foundation of the information is skewed because, you know, there's always conversations about the last usurper, but there's never conversations regarding the usurpers before that, such as French, such as Dutch, such as Spain, such as Portuguese. Those conversations regarding those usurpers and how they made their way to the Americas. We're talking about a body of land, including the adjoining islands. Those conversations are lost in context because everyone only want to focus on the last usurper, which is the British, you know, which a lot of times what I've learned in my studies, and it's not through a download, because if it was through a download, upload, inload, outload, you know, you would create a fallacy and an argument that would keep you spinning, you know. So what I've learned in my studies is you have to be able to, as you stated, show the progression of how everything occurred and how were these colonizers able to get into certain positions when there were already nations, life form, cultural folklores, and things that were going on. And one of the things I want to bring to the stage, I want to point out, this is one of the things that I pointed out in the first 2 episodes. This is like the basis of most civilizations are built off of. The apex would always be like the God principle of that side society, civilization. It's going to focus on either being Christianity as the head, which is Christian-owned, Judaism, Islam, Mohammedanism faith, you know, which that is derived from another faith, Buddhism, Confucian. So at the apex, the top, the pinnacle of most civilizations is their God principle in how, you know, they establish the moral conduct of behavior in that society. Now, law is very important. The law is going to be positive law or negative law. I explained the aspect between positive law, which is jurisprudence. Negative laws is statutory law, statute, codes, and ordinance. And that also deals with amity law, laws of the seas, and laws of the land. Now, language, you're either going to deal with etymology or semantics, which is connotation. And another basis of civilization is the people. We talked about autochthonous, coming from the soil, indigenous, native. It's not the same category. Immigrant, out and in, refugee and asylum seekers. This is very important when you're talking about the different layers in which how a civilization operates and the basis of that. And that's what we're still on till this day. We're still in that framework today. So you want to go ahead and pull up the
No.
information?
I want to deal with this for a
Okay.
second.
All right.
I see at the apex you have Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Confucianism, and Judaism. Um,
And it's probably missing a couple.
no, you're absolutely fine. You're absolutely fine. The jurisprudence, negative law, positive law, etymon, semantics. I would also add phonetics. Also, when people make the comment, "Oh, you speaking? There's just semantics." I say, no, this is phonetics. This is the Phoenicians, not the Sumerians. Different situation. That's what the hooked on phonics. The phonetic sound is how the ancient forefathers and mothers actually spoke. The semantics is something that came a little bit later.
Absolutely. And that deals with the vibrations, how the mouth work, how the word sounds come out, either the ablaut or the umlaut, in the morphing of the word from either nasal, guttural sounds and things of that nature. And as I said, the language follows the colonizer. So a lot of people think when you say colonizer, they're going to immediately think, we're talking about YT people. No.
That's okay. That's what I want to ask you. So, from your perspective, when we say colonizers, who are we talking about? I just want to see where you at with it.
When we're talking about colonizers, we're talking about contracting parties who have decided to have a conquest, which means a war to overthrow. It can be either now we talk about the British, it could be monarchs, which are people that look like ourselves. It could have been Moors. It could have been Moors now under the Spaniard jurisdiction. It could be African Moors. It could be oh my God, Portuguese Moors,
Now,
so when I'm saying colonizers, I'm looking at the framework of colonizers, the colonization. That's why we wanted to touch on the black nobility and the colonial machine, because it's not just dealing with YT people. And I wanted that to be the emphasis in bringing that home.
Okay, we could deal with that. Anything I talk about tonight, I'm not mentioning no YT people. These are all black. I'm using the word black in the colloquial sense. So all scholars in the chat and whoever would see this in the future, just know I'm talking about black in the colloquial sense for the conversation piece. We know that according to science, black means death, right? My question is, which science? Which science? Political and social science. Those are the two sciences. Black means death. So we talk about these individuals, and you mentioned the word colonization. We're talking about what's known as the penal colonies.
Yes.
Okay. The penal colonies are set up. I can give you three kings. That's King James, King Charles, and King George. Those were swarthy men of color who did that. Yes. In fact, many of the first colonists in North America were Sephardic Jews and Muslim Moor ancestry. The colonies were already set up when the YT people got here. When those YT British, the pilgrimage on the Mayflower, when they got here, the colonies was already set up by Moorish ancestry of the Sephardic Jews and the Muslim ancestry since 1492, when they got expelled from Spain.
Absolutely.
Okay. When they got expelled from Spain, they came over here. Now, the second wave of those individuals came over to the Americas. And remember now, we're talking about the Americas, talking about North, Central, and South America. So we have to be very specific when we say coming to the Americas. Which one?
Which one? Yes.
Which America, right? And in what year, right? As in history, as early as 1526, the first colony by the Spanish. Now, you have to watch for the what's known as what a brother on YouTube, forget his name every time. He always say you got to dodge the hijack, which I love saying it because it's true. You got to dodge the hijack. When I say Africans, I'm talking about North African Moors.
Yes.
When I say Moors, I'm talking about Iberian Peninsula Spaniards. When I talk about Iberian Peninsula Spaniards, I'm talking about the Iberian Peninsula Portuguese. I'm talking about the Sephardic Jews. Okay,
Mhm.
that's just the island of what we today call Spain. North of the island of Spain, we're talking about Scotland, Queen Scotia, Black people.
Yes.
And out of her lineage, you get King James, the King of Scotland, the sixth King of Scotland, first King of England. And from James' progenitor, you goes always down to Charles. Charles II, that James was his granddaddy.
So
And
don't
the
throw
reason
your
I say
Bibles away too quick. Tell people about,
it's
hold on
law,
to
it's law.
them.
Keep your Bibles. I'm gonna teach you how to condemn the Europeans with it.
Absolutely.
Return Christianity and the church back to the Europeans. They
Mhm.
created it for their salvation.
Yes.
But we can talk that talk. I love it. So people say the Arab slave trade. Who are they talking about? Who? And that's a rhetorical question. We say the Arab slave trade. We're mainly talking about the Portuguese individuals from what was known back then as the Iberian Peninsula. All right, those are the Arabs we're referring to. If you think we're talking about Arabs out of what we today we call Iraq, Iran, they were not that well established at this juncture in history in the 15th century. They were not that functional at that time period. Not saying that they're excluded from it, but we say Arabs, we're talking about Moors.
Yeah, they
We
didn't have
say
that juice.
we say Sephardic Jews, we're talking about Moors or Hebrew Moors. That's why it's such a close connection to the Moors diaspora and the Hebrew diaspora. That's why you would see things in New York as early as 1921 as the ancient Canaanite temple site up that Noble Drew Ali went to resurrect. You'll start to see that Moorish connection with the Hebrews, but there's a story behind that story that we're not told or taught. Okay, we talk about slavery out of the continent of Africa. Nobody's talking about Queen Nzinga and her 13,000 bodies she committed every month to the Dutch slave trade company. Okay, we're talking about the thousands of so-called Africans out of the continent of Africa coming over to South America. We're not talking about the Royal African company that was ran by Charles II, who was a Black man also. So I can show you the whole entire Black on Black diaspora that YT people were. They were. We give them too much credit.
Absolutely.
We give YTs too much credit. This was literally, and again, I'm using Black as a colloquial sense. This is a Black on Black diaspora. We was taught in reverse that the Europeans came to the continent of Africa. They bypassed malaria. They bypassed the mosquitoes, went to the jungle, snatched up Negroes, threw them on a ship, and then sailed off into the sunrise to America. And had them picking tobacco, picking cotton, so on and so forth. They don't even tell you about the 100 or so Black slave owners in America during the time of slavery. They don't even tell you about the entire Black Senate of South Carolina. Okay. The entire Black Senate of North Carolina in 1867. They don't tell you about Hiram Revels. Not only was the first senator of Mississippi in 1867, but he was also the first Black president of the Confederacy. That's right.
Hidden knowledge.
That's right. We learn about Tulsa, Oklahoma, but we don't learn about Weeksville, which is now Bedford-Stuyvesant, New York, which was one of the first Black communities. We don't learn about Monk's Mound, which was established by Mr. Montgomery, which was the founder of that community. So there's just so much left out and left to interpretation to where we have to, again, be careful of a lot of this language and how it's being portrayed. I started this journey maybe 4 weeks ago, and it actually made me disgusted.
Okay.
For a couple of different reasons and I kept asking myself, why would they teach us like these YT people? We just celebrated Columbus Day a week or two ago, right?
Yes.
Why didn't they tell us that those were Black Moors who owned the ships? The Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria were owned by Black Moors. Why didn't they tell us this? Why didn't they tell us that over half of the Mexican culture comes from Moorish ancestry? Why didn't they tell us that there was Moors in the colonies prior to the 1600s? Why aren't they telling us this stuff? Like
it's like a double-edged sword. It's like, okay, on one hand, we don't want you to know how much power that you actually possessed at one point in time. So we have to appear to be the power brokers of history past, and we'll take the brunt and the L's because we're not going to repent for it because we really didn't do it. That's why we're not repenting for something that we didn't do. But we can't let you guys really know how much power that you possessed throughout this entire just globe, earth plane, period.
You got some people that look like us who were participating, is my point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have people look like us that were participating to keep the information suppressed. People who look like us who were suppressing the knowledge all the way around. Like, we're being fed that during the 1800s, Negroes weren't allowed to read. They couldn't read. It was illegal for them to read. They couldn't read or write. But at the same time, in 1852, you have a whole university now it's called Hampton University. Back then, it was called the Indian Institute of Hampton, of Negroes getting educated right aside their Native American counterparts. During the supposed laws against anti-literacy laws, what they were called. During the time of anti-literacy laws, you had Negroes going to college and owning property. People like Hiram Revels who were never slaves. They don't tell us about that. There's a whole diaspora of us who never participated in slavery at all.
Exactly.
If you get in the time machine and go back and ask them, like, what's slavery? What are we talking about? And we trying to explain to them, oh, they're going because we didn't know about slavery until 1977. They showed us Roots, Alex Haley's Roots, and Alex Haley's other movie called Queen. We didn't know. It was our first time as a people seeing it. The television only had been out for less than 60 years in color. Okay. It was the first time we ever seen the stories that were murmured about.
My brain just did not allow me to accept that. For some, my brain was like, no. I think I have like a old Negro spirit up in me, and and as soon as something stupid come across my pathway, I'd be like, don't take that in. Don't take that in. Don't. Then it'd be like, yes, take that. So
it's already known.
Right. I just was, for the life of me, I just could not accept that out of Africa theory. I could not accept the roots information. I was like, no. And I remember when I obtained my master's degree, I was like, this is not it. There's something missing here. There's something. I kept saying, I need this Christ degree. I didn't know what I was saying. I knew what I was saying internally from an ancestral cellular connection. I knew what I was saying internally, but I know there was work that must be done to get to that Christ consciousness, which is the illumination that comes from within. It's like an internal baptism that moves everything that has been indoctrinated in you. It pushes it out and it lights that fire to be illuminated into new information that's connected to harmony and truth and balance. And I knew that was something that I was seeking. And it started like in 2011. I remember when I got that master's degree, I was like, this ain't it.
No.
This is not it.
No. In fact, hit the share screen for a second. I'm going to show you a couple of people that you should be aware of. This is Melvin J. Herkovich. Melvin J. Herkovich is the father of African American study. This is Melvin J. Herkovich. A lot of people who follow me already know who this is. Melvin Jean Herkovich was the American anthropologist who helped to first establish African American diaspora. The entire ideology of out of Africa theory was birthed by this gentleman right here, and not only him, other individuals such as Franz Boas. Franz Boas is another person you have to be kind of, but what you have to look at the common thread is they were all out of Germany. Which if you follow the breadcrumbs from Germany, it'll take you back to another individual. What's his name? Education. What was his name? Hold, give me a second. Education founder.
Is that Frederick T. Gates?
No.
Okay.
No.
So before that.
Let's talk about the Board of Education for a second. The Board of Education, also known as a school board or a committee, is a governing body that sets up educational policy standards for school districts and other education institutions. This idea of what we call a school board and Board of Education, This comes out of a place that's known as Prussia. Today we call it Russia. What was his name, man? Chat. I'm called to the chat. Chat, help me out. What was his name? Geez, man. I got so many names in my head right now. But anyway, this guy was the I got it. Horace Mann. Here you go, right here. Boom.
Okay.
Ancestors. Thank you, ancestors. They were talking to me. Horace Mann is the reason you even have a former education system in the first place. He's the father of American education, and Horace Mann got the system from Russia. I'm sorry, from Germany. From Germany. Horace Mann was an American educator, former reformer, slave abolitionist, and Whig politician, known for his commitment to promoting public education. He thus also known as the father of American education. In 1848, after Public Service Secretary at Massachusetts of State Board, Mann was elected United States House Representative. From 1852 to his death, 59, he served as the Antioch College. This is the reason you have public education in America. And of course, later going in the line, people like John D. Rockefeller contributes large sums of money to this situation also. And Rockefeller views was I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers. And that was the whole point of the American education system in the first place, was to create a working class group of individuals, not thinkers.
Yes.
Which, if you look at the time period, look at the time period. This is the mid 1800s, right? This is around the time you get your first, we call HBCUs now, but you get your first HBCUs put into place, and along what was called Indian assimilation, the Indian Institute of Hampton. See, it's 1877 and 23. This is during the time that Negroes weren't allowed to read or write, or they'd be punished for doing that. 1877 to 1923. The Indian Institute at Hampton, also known as American Indian Education Program at Hampton University, was a program to educate Native Americans at Hampton Institute in Hampton, Virginia. At the same time, you have these black orphanage asylums who were reprogramming our people, and at an age of, I think, 14 or 15, they would ship them off to the Hampton Institute, and they would learn either agriculture or a mechanic trade. And this would we get the terminology from Texas A&M. That means agriculture and mechanics. All HBCUs started what's called land grant colleges. And nobody was going to Princeton, nobody was going to Harvard, nobody was going to Yale to be smart. But out of those Negroes who were going to these, what would become known as HBCUs, the top 10% of those individuals were being plucked from institutions by people like W.E.B. Du Bois, who wanted the top 10% elite Negroes from the institution to go on and found other assimilations. What was called the Negro Project that we sometimes see with, what's her name? Margaret Singer.
Yes. Now, if you would, could you,
Yeah.
I know some people say, well, he said Indian. It started off as Indian school. I think a lot of people get Indian confused with
Okay.
Black, confused with African American, confused with color. So could define that for our listening audience.
Going into 2025, I'm explaining to you, but going to 2025, we're not dealing with none of those what's called
misnomers.
Not even misnomers. They're known as let me look it up for you, show you real quick. I like to show people stuff. They're known as exonyms.
Oh, yes.
An exonym is something that is given to a group of people by another group of people. I'm not dealing with exonyms, endonyms and exonyms, right? The argument will stay on an argument for 20 minutes talking about exonyms, Black, Native American, like, look, y'all, listen. And that shit is a distraction. Anytime I'm in conversation with anybody and they start talking like that, they're agents, because they don't want the truth to get out. They're gonna block by any means necessary. You know what the fuck I'm talking about. Excuse my language.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, yes. That's why I definitely wanted that to
Just
be
for
clear up.
clarity, that's why I
Yes.
said in the beginning, we're going to use the colloquial meaning. If you know what the word colloquial means, that means for common usage of conversation. We're going to keep the conversation down here so nobody's confused.
Absolutely.
So if you hear me refer to Africans, I'm talking about Moors. Talking about Moors, I'm talking about swarthy. If I say swarthy, I'm talking about Tudor. Talking about Tudor, I'm talking about Stuarts. That's where we get lost at.
Absolutely.
Trying to put a exonym on a group of individuals or a person, and you get hung up. Dodge the hijack. I'm taking the brother word and using it. Shouts out to him. Get his name again, but dodge the hijack, y'all.
Yes.
Right. And remember earlier, I told you people like, oh man, that's just semantics. No, it's phonetics.
It's phonetics. Yes.
Semantics are for the Sumerians, and phonetics are for the Phoenicians. This is phonetically speaking. If you don't know the difference between phonetics and semantics, I encourage you all to look that up. Then dealing with phonetics or semantics, then you deal with the etymology of things. And because we all speak a common language called English, we deal with the law of English, which is called the lexicon. And if you do not understand the law of language, then you are dyslexic.
Yes.
And a lot of people are just dyslexic. And it's okay to mean, this doesn't mean that you're
illiterate.
You're dorsal or feeble-minded. This means you're just uninformed or you're ill-informed about information. And that's my life path is to give you information.
Now, language unlocked so much for me.
Absolutely.
When I went to, and this shout out to Brother Abdullah El Talib Mosley Bay. When I first met him, I think it was November of 2016. And he invited me to a class that he taught at Temple and that's when I lived at the time up in Wilmington, Delaware. He taught at Temple at their like PASEP community building, and he taught etymology there. And I remember the first day in there, I really thought he was like punking me out because you think you hold a master's degree, you think you know everything, right? So, I mean, you think you know it all, and you don't know anything. So I remember saying, okay, I'll come to your class. This was on a Friday when I met him. His class started at Monday. So I had to go online this Saturday, go ahead and register at Temple for the course, paid my 30 notes, and went on ahead to class that Monday. And I remember in class, he was like, what is this word? What is the etymology of this word? And I was like, grab a dictionary, so people laugh and sniggling because he have some, well-learned people in the classroom. I'm a novice. I'm new to class. And I felt like he was punking me out. I was like, oh, I don't have to be here for this. And he was like, no, sister, I'm not trying to discourage you or make fun of you. He said, and this is what happens in the board of educational system, where we thought we were taught the true meaning of words, and we learn here there's a whole set of understanding of words and language. And when I start learning about etymology and learning the true science and true meaning of words, that's when they help me to read and unlock old ancient texts and be able to properly understand it in this context of reading, because you can't take old context and apply the modern definition of that word. So you will be so far off basis to it's not even funny. So I'll tell anybody, get into the roots, learn etymology. It's very important if you want to continue your journey of enlightenment.
Well, but not just the etymology, which is super important to know the origin of the word, because that helps you to understand or to place it in its proper matrix when it comes to the time frame. If we're having a conversation about the 1400s, we're going to refer to people as what they was referred to in the 1400s. Talk about the 1300s and back. We have to unfortunately drop the letter J, drop the term black, and go into what they were calling that time frame, and that gets you a deeper meaning or a better search, which leads us into the topic at hand, dealing with Black nobility. And again,
Right.
I'm using the term black, swarthy, Tudor, Stuart, Moorish. Okay,
So
Whatever
around
makes you all feel
1400,
better.
you would say like 1400s, that'll be like the time period. I have that. I showed that information. Also, the language, the scale of how language, morphs into the different areas. So 14, that would be like Old English, right? Because modern English started like 1500. So 1400, they dealt more so with Old English and Latin. Arabic, they was trying to call it a dead language,
We
but
have to be careful with the hijack.
yeah,
Understand that
right.
Latin was called Ladino.
Yes.
Ladino, okay, which gives you
Show
Moorish
that.
Latin.
Show that, please. Show
Absolutely.
that so people can understand the difference between a D and a T when you're looking at the variation of the words.
The Ladino language. Okay, I'm sharing my screen.
Yes.
And again, since we're talking about the 1400s, we're going to talk about the power structure of what was known as the Iberian Peninsula.
Okay.
Okay. There are multiple matches for Ladino, including the language and term for people in Central America, which we commonly refer to as Latino. The D and the T are interchangeable. I think me and Brother Crom pointed out on one of our lives when dealing with people like Medea. Medea in her comedy, Tyler Perry comedy sketch, oftentimes replaces the D and the T
Mm-hmm.
a lot because they're interchangeable. The Ladino is a Romance language spoken by Sephardic Jews and Sepharadism. When we use the word Sephardic Jews, okay, or the word Sephardic, the word Sephardic simply means Iberian. Iberian, okay? Those from Iberian, right? And when they, well, we'll get to it in a second. The Sephardic Jews of Sephardim, who originated in the Iberian Peninsula, it is also known as Judo-Spanish or Judaismo. Ladino is based on the Spanish and other Iberian languages, but also incorporates elements from the language of the Mediterranean world, such as Turkish, Greek, Italian, French, and Arabic. Keep that in mind because I can also, I'm showing in a second how a brother by the name of Esteban de Dorente, who was also a Moorish black conquistador who traveled with Cortez over to the Americas, he communicated with the Native Americans over here as he traveled from, I think, the shipwreck somewhere in New Orleans. He walked from New Orleans all the way to New Mexico, where he was unfortunately unalive, but he was able to speak 6 different languages because the common thread of the language was part Ladino and part Hebrew, and that's what the Native Americans knew. That's how you can draw yourself back to them as well as being, I'm saying Native American, I mean American Indians. Let me correct myself. Lord have mercy. The
Yes.
American Indians,
Yes.
the indigenous aborigine, and whatever title you need to know what I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about. I'm not talking about the ones who came on the Barren Straits under Ho Shan, not those individuals. Ladino is based in Spanish and Iberian language, but also incorporates elements from the languages of the Mediterranean world, such as Turkish, Greek, Italian, French, and Arabic. Just like with English, English is comprised of 5 different languages. Also,
Yes.
English was called a trade language, a common language spoken upon the seas and ports people can communicate. Ladino is spoken by a small number of native speakers, usually of the advanced age, scattered around the world. Efforts are being made to keep the language alive, including courses at American universities, a Ladino academy in Israel, an online forum, and a monthly Ladino language newspaper in Turkey. The term Ladino is also a term for people of Central America who are mixed of Meso Mexicans or Hispanicized people. We're talking about Moors
Yes.
right here, okay? The word Ladino, Spanish, means Latin. Ladinos were characterized by their use of Spanish language and their preference for Western dress. In the 21st century, most Latinos lived in cities, but some who remain in rural areas practice subsistence agriculture. Now, I can also, which I will put up here in a second, right? Ladino preserves many words and grammatical usage that have been lost, sorry, in modern Spanish. It is also more conservative sound system. For example, F and G sounds still occur where modern Spanish has a H, as in Ladino, fajo or fabla versus Spanish, hayo, habla. It's just showing you the difference. And right here, Ladino, Sephardic, Jewish, Hebrew. Hebrews is laced in there also. The Hebrew language is in there also, which gives you variations of what we call Mexican today or Spanish today in Mexico. There is a Moorish connection in Mexico, huge Moorish connection in Mexico, but of course they're going to call them Spaniards from the Spanish Empire. So, but just to show you how the language also should be studied. Not saying you have to go learn a language. I know I wanted to know more about Arabic. So I think the first thing I taught myself was the Surah Fatima, the Surah Fatima. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah. I wanted to learn exactly what that meant first. And I sat there and I studied and I studied and I studied. Bismillah, what does that mean? Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And I just took the language. And once I was able to learn and recite it and understand what it means, it unlocked a whole other meaning of the Arabic language for me. Same thing with Spanish. So as something I say, once you learn the language, they can't lie to you no more.
Absolutely.
Once you learn the language, can't nobody lie to you ever again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You'll be looking at them like, go try somebody else with that.
Now let's go here. Then we'll jump over to Europe from here. Give me a second to type this in. Esteban. Oh, messing up. Esteban. And I'm going to show you who Esteban is here in a second. Know how to translate because he was an interpreter for the Spaniards, even though he was a Spaniard himself. He was an interpreter. Here we go. Little is known about his name is Esteban background, but contemporary accounts describe him as a Negro or an Arab-speaking black man. First of all, I read what I got over here on my other page because it ain't coming up here. But it says Esteban, known as Esteban, was a translator for the American indigenous people because he had spent several years wandering through America's Southwest after surviving a shipwreck, during which the time he learned and adopted. Where we at? Learned and adopted the language and culture of various Native American tribes, becoming a skilled interpreter through prolonged exposure and interaction with them. Essentially, he learned their language through immersing while living among them. Now, more to that point, there was a common thread of how the Native Americans, American Indians spoke, and the Hebrew. Remember that Hebrew language is going to be the connecting factor throughout history of how these Moorish Spaniards interacted with the so-called Native Americans here in America.
I think one of the things that really just grinds my gear when I hear someone say, "Oh, we didn't know how to read," and I'm like,
"Yeah, that's not true."
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
Yeah, that's
Now,
not true at all.
how is it that a people that's first in time, not that created the alphabets, created language, not know how to read? Not,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that just grinds my gear when I hear someone say that. That is another lie that's been embedded into that slavery story.
Yeah. What's your take on the slave narrative itself before we jump over into the diaspora of
My take
kingdoms?
on it from what I've read, what I've studied along the way, because I started my studying back in 2011. So what I've learned that all of our skin folks are not our kin folks. Also, there is a contract involved here. There's contracts involved with, just like, okay, if you work at a corporation today, you have what you call a human resource department, and you have what you call recruiters that go out, and now today's that's the modern take on it. You have recruiters that go out and search for people that have this particular skill set. During that time frame, the skill set was building the plantation, growing of sugarcane, cotton, and things of that nature. Now, if you have the human resources, back during that time period, I think the people would have been brought up on charges of mishandling of their employees. And a lot of the mishandling happened by way of people that just looked like you and I. That's my take on it.
Well, uh, again, when we talk about slavery in America, the only, not the only, one of the only important things we should be concerned with is something called the second domestic slave trade. This is the slave trade that affected us the most, us meaning descendants of people of color in America. The Atlantic slave trade had nothing to do with people here in North America. Like
No,
there's
no, I do recall. I do recall from my understanding. My back up. I do recall from my understanding in that direction. You had a migration of time period where the slave trade went to the South America first. It happened in the Spanish zone, and that was by way of the
Moors, to say it, Moors.
yeah, the Moors. That happened by way. That happened. Well, first you had one through Alfonso, which went to Western Africa, and which Alfonso was given permission to South America. I think a lot. The first wave of it was all dealing with South America, which called Central America, which is that now became the Spanish zone. And like you said, the second wave deals with the main. I'll just say the mainland, the
the
mainland.
the the talking about South America, the first wave was done by Spanish conquistadors
Yes,
transporting American Indians out of South America back over to African parts of Europe. That was the first slave trade ever, in mass on record. Queen Nzinga,
so the story was reversed.
well, not reverse. It's just it's not told in correct order. If you remember nothing else, sis, after this live going forward in your studies, you have to put stuff in time and space.
Absolutely.
I don't care what nobody's telling you. Ask them when and where and who. Make them tell you who. Don't just, oh, the European, which Europeans, where, who? Give me a name. There's names of people. Give me a freaking name. The transatlantic slave trade. Who was doing the slave? Who was doing the slaving of these people? Queen Nzinga was supplying over 13,000 bodies a month to the Dutch Trading Company. The Dutch Trading Company was putting bodies on the backside of South America, right? Now, Argentina is the front side. Brazil is the backside. That's the west coast of South America. Spain had the backside on lock. The front side of South America was still open territory for the Portuguese. Now, out of the Congo, right? King, the brother you say Alfonso and his lineage were at war with Queen Nzinga in the Ndongo nation below them. They were at odds with one another. The Portuguese were helping out the Congo, which would later bite them in the butt. But the Portuguese was helping them out, and then to the south, the Ndingo empire ran by Queen Nzinga was getting helped by the Dutch, and they both agreed to supply. I can pull the numbers up and show you the numbers. Like those millions of Africans who came from Africa over to the Americas, it counts body by body. Oh, damn. Okay. So again,
Yeah.
this is black on black crime. This is Africans shipping Africans out of Africa. No YT people at all.
Yes.
The YT people were just the merchants. They were just contractors.
Let's see
Like
that number.
they were just, I'll show you. They were just contractors. Like they had nothing to do with that stuff, man. Um, how many right here? See, I got it still highlighted in my thing right here. She was selling them. This Queen Nzinga. She's in the southern territory. So you have Congo, King Alfonso. Then you have Queen Nzinga, the Ndongo Empire. They both were shipping Africans to Spain and Portugal. And I'm gonna show you these. I'm gonna show you these African slaves who got shipped to Spain and what they became. It's gonna put a whole other spin on the KKK for you. I'm gonna show you the oldest black fraternity in the world.
Let's do it.
Okay, so Queen Nzinga sold nearly 200,000 enslaved Africans to the Portuguese during her reign. Her forces captured hundreds of thousands of people. Now she didn't want her people to go get caught, so she went and got other people, right? Nzinga was the monarch of the Mbundu people and known for her efforts to protect her people from the slave trade. She fought against the Portuguese. Now, above it says she sold people to the Portuguese. Now she's against the Portuguese. They'll get into what happened. She fought against the Portuguese in their expanding slave trade in Central Africa. She also established her kingdom as a safe haven for runaway slaves. So they try to paint her as this whatever, but she was doing dirt. Nzinga established a lucrative slave trade with the Dutch. So you saw the Portuguese slavers she was dealing with, right? To the Portuguese, 200,000 to Portuguese, and she also gave 13,000 per year to the Dutch slavers. That's just her.
She was making good compensation.
Now, and she ended up being baptized and Christianized also.
I bet she did.
To appease the spreading of Christendom. I told you Christendom was the conquesting of Christianity, not the religion itself, just the conquesting of it. King, what was his name again? Right here, see? King Alfonso. He was also doing the same thing, shipping Africans out of Africa to the Portuguese, because the Portuguese had to populate the front side of South America. The back side of South America is already populated by the Spaniards or the Moors or the black conquistadors who were shipping out American Indians. I'm going to show you the American Indian number here in a second as well. This is Alfonso. He's the sixth ruler of the Kingdom of Congo. Remember, he was at odds. He was at odds with the southern region, which was Queen Nzinga. They were at odds. They didn't get along at all, actually. The Portuguese were helping them out. It's basically how they did the American Indians. They came in and tried to, well, they did infiltrate. They infiltrated both tribal kingdoms and turned one against the other. And he was receiving guns and ammunition for shipping out his people. So he almost overpowered the lower kingdom of Ndungo, which is Queen Nzinga, but the Dutch were giving her weapons as well, because the Dutch wanted to keep those fresh bodies coming as well. He was born into the ruling class, the King of Congo, right? This is important. I see it somewhere. Right here. He was Christianized as Joa, King John. The word Joa, watch this, Joa the first is King John. King John. King John. King John, one of Portugal. So this is the actual John of Portugal. And you have King Joa. Joa means John also. You see that?
So he was exalted.
He was exalted by the Portuguese monarchs.
Yes.
All right. So that's who he was. So yeah, we start seeing that these Africans participated heavily in shipping out their
he
people.
became a pope, right?
Not him. Not him.
Or was that Alfonso the what, seventh? I mean, not sorry, fourth.
Well, you got to dodge the hijack. The ruling class of Congo were bestowed titles of nobility by the Portuguese. So you would have a King John in actual Portuguese in Portugal. Do you have a King John in Congo? Right? Just like you had, about King Philip's wars over here.
Yes, I was more so thinking of King of the Pope Alfonso, who issued the Dum Diverses.
No.
Okay.
Not him.
Not
he was
him.
out of France.
Okay. Before, Pope Sixtus that issued the Doctrine of Discovery. So I was thinking more so along that line. So it's two different time frames.
Yeah, two different ones. Native American slaves were shipped from the Americas primarily by European colonists. You gotta be sure that we understand who we're talking about. European colonists, all right? Because our people suffer from what's called psychoneurosis, which is a common condition of the so-called Negroes who have affiliated themselves with foreigners for too long. We think like them, act like them. We begin to believe what they believe. We suffer from what's called European xenophilia and all those things. So the moment I say Europeans, because you have not been taught up until tonight about the different dynastic periods of Negroes, even after the Moors were expelled from Spain, you still had a black nobility class ruling in Upper Europe. I'll show you them in a second. So dodge the hijack on the word European and African and black and more. Like, just stop with the, just go study, please. I'm telling you, it opens up a whole nother world when you understand. Just by saying the word European colonist, you're not talking about a YT person. Okay. European colonists often through coastal ports to various destinations like the Caribbean islands. So they were shipping Native Americans out of North America to the Caribbean islands, intermixing them with the Arawak, the Taino, the later we would call them Maroon people, including Barbados, Jamaica. These are the Caribs. So now the Caribs have been intermingled with Native Americans from North America, where they were sold, worked on plantations. Now, when you say work on plantations, what pops in your head? Again, that's a psychoneurosis. You see people of color like your granddad and them out in cotton fields when those were not slaves, those were sharecroppers and tenant farmers. Nothing to do with slavery. These shipments were often carried out on slave ships. No such thing as a slave ship. No such thing. All right. So there's cargo ships, but there's no such thing. Like, nobody was building ships just to carry human cargo. That would have been inefficient. Similar to those used in the transatlantic slave trade, with captured Native Americans being crammed into holes and transported across the ocean under harsh conditions. Now, they're talking about taking Native Americans from North America, bringing them down past Florida, right to Jamaica. That's like a Carnival cruise, right? A 2-3 day cruise, not like the harsh conditions of our African kinfolks coming from places like Congo. All right, bringing them over to South. It's a much longer trip, and there are no movies other than the movie Amistad. And the Amistad movie didn't show you Africans coming from Africa, by the way. They showed you Africans who got hijacked in the Gulf of Mexico and got brought to Virginia. There are no movies showing you Africans coming out of Africa on a slave ship to the Americas. It just doesn't exist. They show you movies like 12 Years a Slave. They show you Django. What's another one? Roots. Those movies happened in the 1800s. 1808, international slave trade was outlawed amongst the seas. Nobody came into America after 1808.
You know, the imagery is wild that you see when you go to some of these African American, and I have my quotation marks up, African American museums, and also there's one in Baltimore.
You got to be, I'm going to cut your wisdom. You got to be careful. Those are Africans in America.
Right.
I-N.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, continue.
And I'm just saying those pictures that's been placed on the psyche of our people to depict the story. You know, it's been a well thought out plan of mental oppression that's, you know, continue to go on today.
Well, you got to look at it like this right here.
So I guess I would say it's like that there must be a falling away. There must be a breaking of that. You know,
there must be a re-education. And what does the word education mean? Because from the Greek word "ediku" means to pull out what's already in you.
Right. To lead
you already know it,
mm-hmm.
right? It just has to be pulled out of you,
mm-hmm.
right? And things like what we're doing and what you're doing right now also helps people to understand what was going on. What was that question? He said, what about the people of color before that time period in America? Yes. Click on that comment for a second.
There you go.
In the Nation of Islam, there's a teaching that was passed down by Master Farad Muhammad on down to Honorable Elijah Muhammad, down to Farrakhan and Malcolm X. And there was a question posed to the Nation of Islam. That's why I told you all schools of thoughts matter. The question was asked, who was the original man? The Asiatic black man, the owner, the maker, the cream of the earth, and the father of the universe. How much did the planet weigh? 6 quintillion tons, preceding 13 cycles. How many square miles of habitable land do we have on the planet? Over a certain amount of, I forgot the number, but certain amount of square miles of land that we have in habitable land. If we all can agree that we are the original people of Earth, that we are the original Earthlings, like an avatar, then we can stop with the whole colorism shit. We can stop with the whole who was in America first, who was here. You were. That's it. Why do I say you?
We were everywhere.
Right. Like, this is our planet. Period. This is our planet. So until our people at large can begin to conceptualize that ideology and stop with the out of Africa theory. Y'all understand Africa is still not developed yet, right?
And I think another one of the arguments and fights that must be put to rest is this fight for one landmass. Like you said, there must be an understanding that we populate the entire earth.
All of it.
Yeah, all of it.
You are the original earthlings.
Right. First in time, first in law, which first custodian, what no man has created. You know, we have been given custodian of it. And unfortunately, we are not in our rightful position of custodianism to be able to effectively continue to heal the earth and receive from it as we were placed here to do. So one of the things that I feel that we should definitely put to rest is wherever we plant our feet, our head is home. We can be, in Spain, like you said, you could be in that territory of the jurisdiction. I'm just going to say jurisdiction, or what is called the territory of Spain. You can be in Africa, the jurisdiction of Africa, of that territory. And I'm saying these words definitively because the entire earth is under usurpation. So you have the true territorial names being overlapped with the jurisdictional overseeing of that. So we must know that everywhere we go, we are home. So this fight over this one landmass, we must kill that. It's a mute fight. Everywhere we go is home.
Let me camel back on that by sharing this right quick.
It's still up? Okay, let me bring it back in.
It's a quote by George Washington. If we could take it's supposed to be fez. If we can take the fez off their heads and the sandals off their feet, it is no attribute, right? He's explaining if we take the fez off their head and the sandals off their feet, George goes on to say, in 100 years, the Moors will not know who they are. If we agree to take the fezes and the turbans off the Moors' head and remove the sandals from their feet and enforce it with severe punishment, in 100 years, they will not know who they are. This is George Washington.
Mm-hmm.
If we agree to take the fezes off their head and the fez and the turbans off their head, off the Moors' head, and the sandals off their feet, in 100 years, they would not know who they are. And I'd be damned, in 2024, we're trying to reteach people who they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Stiff-necked people.
Oh my God.
Ears are uncircumcised. We don't want to believe of our greatness. We cling to the Africans in American history, the Africans in American Museum. That's why in the Africans of America Museum, you get the Harriet Tubmans, you get the Sojourner Truths, you get those Africans in there because they're Africans. They're from the continent of Africa physically. You get people like Marcus Garvey trying to get you to go back to Africa. You're like, what? We're not from Africa. As I say before, I'm 42, and I remember growing up when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. If you call me African Buddha Scratcher, we're fighting. I don't care who you are, we're fighting. And as I got older, I said, why are we fighting over something so silly? Because we knew who we were.
Absolutely.
Everybody over the age of 40 in their youth has heard from somebody, or your grandma was so-and-so and Indian in your family. And as we got older, due to the educational system and psychoneurosis, we began to become ashamed of that. You got Indian in your family. You might drive a Cherokee Jeep. Like, we started to pick at it, so we shied away from it.
It's funny you say that because my sister and I, we are like 13 months apart, right? I'm the baby. I just turned 51. We're 13 months apart. Now, on her birth certificate, actually, she has her certificate of live birth. Mine's been misplaced. She has her original certificate of live birth. On that, my mother's race was classified as she was colored. That was 72, May of 72. My mother was classified as colored. October of 73, Same child, a different child from the same womb, 13 months apart, and my mother race changed to Black. I was like, good God Almighty. It's amazing what they would do in just that short period of time, you know. And like the more I just go into this, the more you go into this, the more you realize that, you know, this information, we must continue to hammer it into our people to understand who they are. We must break the chain. Like you said, recently, you have a lot of people created friction in their homes, friction in their friendship over who's going to be the number 47 gatekeeper of the jurisdiction of America. Yeah.
And you know, he's only in that seat because we don't.
We're not in our proper place.
That's it. So foreigners got to run our land.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately,
until
Donald Trump has a nationality. You know.
Mm-hmm. Until we come into right mind and understanding of who we are, then we can we'll be able to govern. But right now, we're not even in a position to govern ourselves, let alone govern a nation.
No. Read some stats out real quick before we jump to Europe. According to the estimates from scholars like Linford Fisher, between 2.5 and 5.5 million Native Americans were enslaved in Americas between 1492 and 1880. I thought it was because if I go to the African slave trade, it's going to show you 2.5 million. This is 2.5 and 5 million Native Americans were enslaved in the Americas between 1492 and 1880. We're talking about all Americas, North, Central, and South, highlighting the significant scale of the American Indian slave trade. However, the exact number remains unknown due to lack of comprehensive records. Estimates suggest millions of Native Americans were enslaved throughout the Americas, often captured by European colonizers and other Native American tribes during the conflict. And there were intertribal slavery as well that happened. And here are the numbers here again, 2.5 to 5 million were shipped out of North America and shipped over to places like Jamaica, the islands, even to Europe and over to Africa. And a lot of them were shipped back from Africa to the Americas. And they really hated that. So they would kill themselves or throw themselves off the ship. They tell us the story of us coming from Africa over here when it was us leaving America going over there.
Yes.
And going down to the islands as well. So let's talk about the individuals who were responsible for a lot of this stuff. Let's go to the early colonial setting, which would be Jamestown, Virginia. Jamestown, Virginia, historically was founded between 1607, 1616. Some people say that, 1616. Jamestown was founded in 1607, is widely recognized as the first permanent English settlement in America. Most of our people would be remiss to think that this is the first colony.
No.
When it wasn't the first colony, or first attempt at a colony.
Was it Renault?
Nope, let's go here. 1526. We go back 100 years before that. 1526, Lucas Vasquez established a Spanish colony in what was now called Saint Miguel de Guadalupe. That's in Georgia. He had 100 enslaved Africans. Dodged the hijack, 1526. These are Spaniards. These are enslaved North African Berbers, who you call Moors. The duration was 3 months. The ship was lost. Late arrival, disease killed them, conflict. Those 100 Africans revolted and ran off into the wilderness and joined forces with the local indigenous tribes. How many of y'all are descendants from those 100 Africans who amalgamated with those Indian tribes? How many of y'all are descendants from them? So you could be African descent. And don't worry about it. I'm going to show you some Black European descent. And that's why when you do your little swab spit test, you have so much percentage of Europeans in your trace line. You're thinking there's white tea people. No, those are swarthy Black people from Europe.
Yeah, actually, I have that. What was his name? Tyrone Bay.
Those are Black swarthy people.
Right, the genealogy chart. And I think mine said 98% of America, and it talked about the malaria, and actually it gave a percentage from
What's your blood type?
O
It's,
positive.
it's gonna be O. It's gonna be O because the
Mhm,
vast majority of Africans from the kind of Africa are
mhm.
B type. They're more prone to their blood is more homogeneous to things like malaria. But they're so sickly all the
Yes.
time, right? Okay. So blood quantum is something that was created a little bit later. Somebody in the comments asked, founded or discovered. Um, founded.
Fine.
Jamestown was founded after a lot of tries. We'll get there in a second. The Spanish were the first Europeans. You see how I told you earlier how they say Europeans? Your mind went right to like British and white people and didn't think
Mhm.
about Spain is part of Europe. Yeah, dodge the hijack. The Spanish were the first Europeans to explore Georgia, following Indian trails to the coast in 1526. Their early attempts at colonization established the presence of both Europeans and Africans in Georgia. In 1526, I thought it was 16. Like,
Mm-mm.
it ain't 1619 in Georgia. Now we can read on here, but everybody write this down. Y'all know how I do. Get pen and paper. Don't believe a word I say. I'm not here to convince any of you guys. It's just information. Please go do your own research. Is a former Spanish colony founded in 1526 by Lucas. It was the third settlement in North America, north of Mexico. Did y'all know that? In the early 1500s, Spaniards were conducting expeditions to the area known as South Carolina in Georgia to kidnap Native Americans as slaves. Did y'all know that? So when we talk about the tribal affiliation between South Carolina and Georgia, we're talking about the Geechee Gullah, talking about the Yamacraw, we're talking about the Yamasee, we're talking about the Coweta, talking about the Blackfoot.
The
Um,
creeks.
well, yeah, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
want to get into Creeks and Cherokee. Those were.
So
I'm talking about the Black swarthy tribes
yes.
of the Southeast region. You get into Creek Nation, all that kind of stuff. Now it gets a little weird because they were like in the North Georgia
Right. It,
mountains.
it expanded a little bit. Yes.
Yeah, in the North Georgia mountains, there were some other individuals up there in the North Georgia mountains. But in the deep South, the Yamasee, the Yamacraw, the Geechee Gullah, what they call the Cimarroons, or what's called the Seminoles, those tribes, and there's several more. We get into the Muskogee and all those individuals too. Then up in the Virginia area, you have the Pamunkey and the Wampanoag also, which the war with what's his name,
The
Chief
Powhatan War.
Matacom, King Philip. They call him Matacom. He was a Wampanoag Indian brother of color who first encountered those Europeans coming into the area, what we call there Virginia. But this is a settlement you should write down and take note of, 1526. Now, the question is, were these are Moors, Spaniards, Spain, Moors. This is 1526. So it's about close to 80 or so years after 1492, the expulsion of the Moors out of Spain as it was taught to everybody. A lot of them people didn't go nowhere. They stayed right there, and they
Mhm.
converted to Catholicism. They became Moriscos. They didn't go nowhere. They stayed out. Some of them did leave. Some of them did leave. Some of them did get permission or a couple of days, 30 days to leave and get out of Spain. Some of them just relocated to North Africa and what we call today Morocco. A lot of them came over to the colonies in America. But they was over here as early as like the 8th century. Let me show you something real quick. Let me pull this
Well,
up.
they were able to continue to utilize their skill set to help the new Oregon and Castile with their journey. So they was like, okay, let's go ahead and use what we got to help out and continue to make money because they were merchants as well.
Yeah, those were the black conquistadors.
Yes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Many of the first colonists in North America with Sephardic, Jewish, and Muslim Moorish ancestry. Many of the first colonists in North America were Sephardic Jews and Muslim Moorish ancestry, and they held a prominent position in society. And the expulsion of the Sephardic Jews and the Muslim Moors from Spain during 1492s paved the way for conquest of the New World. They were already over here, and the colonies. That's Jamestown. That's the territory, what we call Carolinas, which was set up in 1663 under what was called Lord Proprietors by King Charles II. That's Georgia territory in the mid 1700s by James Oglethorpe. Okay, those are those territories. James Oglethorpe encountered Chief Tamachichi of the Yamacraw Indians and took him over to Europe and brought him back. I'm gonna show you a picture of him and a little Negro black boy who was interpreting between the English and Chief Tamachichi. But I just want to show you that the Sephardic Jews and the Moors had been here since the colonial time period, and even before that. Many Sephardic Jews immigrated to the North American United States from the Balkans, Greece, Turkey between 1880 and 1920. Most settled in New York, establishing leading Judo Spanish communities outside of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire is definitely important. We're not looking for a Moorish empire, we're looking for an Ottoman empire, so terminology. So when people say, the Moorish Empire, that's actually a misnomer. The term Moors refer to a group of individuals from the Iberian Peninsula, so on and so forth, right? The empire was called the Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire was due a beating from the Christian Empire or the Anglican Church back when the Ottoman Empire under Muhammad II killed the whole situation by Muhammad II killed the Byzantine ruler and took over as the ruler of the East Greek Orthodox Church we call Catholicism or the Catholic Church, right? This is an old war. This goes back beyond the Crusades and the Punic Wars. So it was like it was a chess game. The Christian church, like, boom, gotcha. The Ottoman Empire, like, nope, got y'all. Damn. Moors rule for a second. Christian comes back with the Anglicans and the power of the French, and they're let's get them, and they got them. Boom, got y'all again. So it was a back and forth religious war in short terms. But the Ottoman Empire, Sephardic Jews, out of this diaspora of the Sephardic Jews immigrating to North America, United States, in the 1880s and 1920s, we'll see things like the old Canaanite temple. You see things like Noble Drew Ali, the Morristown Temple of America. This is during what was called the Third Great Awakening, which was a great religious movement throughout America. You see the Mormons and what's his name, Sweet Daddy Grace, and other clergymen who were very prominent in the African American community in that time frame come through America also. But they've been here since the time of the colony, though. All right. Want to point that out real quick.
Can we get clarity on that? Because a lot of times people are on the assumption that the name of the colonies, like the names that we see now, are here now, such as Delaware, New York, New Jersey, things of that nature. They were named by YT colonists. Can we get some clarity on that?
Okay, well, let's go here. Because
we want to demystify a lot of this.
King James, never mind that they
don't let the image
literally whitewashed. Literally whitewashed.
Definitely don't let that trick you up.
Never mind. Well, some people will get tricked by the imagery of this individual.
Yes.
Yeah, this right here. It is probably a more appropriate individual. Rendition of who he was. But nevertheless, this is King James, right? King James set up the Virginia colony. Can we agree to that? Mm-hmm. That's Delaware. That's Pennsylvania, Virginia, the Eastern Seaboard, New Hampshire, New Amsterdam. Anything with the word "new" on the front was under this situation right here. Now, King James, before we get into who he was, sets up the VA colony. These are penal colonies, by the way. All right, penal colonies. That's why you get a lot of information dealing with the confusion between servitude and slavery. Yes. Slavery, as we were taught, was never in the colonies. 1600s, no. 1700s, no. The latter 1700s, doing what was called the 1779 Naturalization Act. Along what happened was the first U.S. Census happened in 1779. Oh my God. Thank you. High honest noble Jew Ali. That's why the prophet tells us that you're not Negro, you're not black, you're not colored. Those are all labels given to you by slave catchers. It was given to you in 1779. Why was it given to the 1779 prophet? Because there was the first U.S. census. Also, it was called the Naturalization Act, which denationalized you and naturalized him to the land. Islam. King James I established the Virginia colony by granting a charter to the Virginia Company of London, 1606. We're going to talk about these companies. I want you guys to write down the Virginia Company, because then we're going to talk about who was the financiers of these companies. A lot is going to lead back to those Sephardic Jews, by the way. Heads up, who were swarthy Moors.
Swarthy, yes.
The charter. That's why President Washington had to do the peace and treaty with the Sultan of Morocco, and the Sultan said, "Yeah, use my subjects. It's okay. They're my subjects. Just use them. It doesn't matter." The charter gave the Virginia Company the authority to establish an English settlement in the Chesapeake region of North America. The company was also responsible for providing settlers supplies and ship. This is important. These settlers are going to come over under what's called contracts, known as a bond of servitude. Later, late 1700s, early 1800s, those bonds, what we know as bit bonds, would be purchased. And those bit bonds are what's being purchased. Why I say that black people are under bondage, not chain, bonds.
Yes.
Like, I need you to go my bond. I'm in jail. What? What am I paying? Go find a bondsman.
That's
right?
now put up on the stock market.
Right. They were trading bonds because those bonds had certain assets attached to it. Right. This is part of the reason people like the Lord proprietors, after King James sets up the colonies, I'm explaining in a second, we go into another situation where King Charles II established Lord proprietors, because the Lord proprietors held him down during the time that his father, King Charles I, got beheaded. And King Charles I is the grandson of King James, and King Charles II is the great grandson of King James. They're all swarthy Negroes. Okay. Don't get it twisted. King Charles II had to flee to France, of which the word Stuart would lose the W and gain a U. They're spelled two different ways. It's crazy. Charles II actually ran away as a runaway. He had to hide in the woods and everything. It's a crazy story. The charter gave the Virginia Company the authority to establish.
He ran out the crown.
Well, he had to. One Lord proprietor, Mr. Cromwell, will step in and intervene on his behalf, and then he would get the kingdom back later. But the ones who held him down while he was gone away, he called them Lord proprietors. And those Lord proprietors, he gave property, what was now it's known as North Carolina and South Carolina. Back then, it was just one Carolina. Prior to it being settled as Carolina, it was all called Floridia. That was all Spanish colony. That's right. From up to Virginia, all the way down to Florida, was one big colony or one big territory who belonged to Spain. I just told you Spain tried to settle it 3 times. It was unsuccessful. So they said, fuck it. We just take Florida and keep ourselves down here in Central America, which opened up game for the British or the England to come and set up territory later in 1606. Remember, I just showed you guys in 1526, Spain tried to settle the area called Georgia, right? 800s, Muslims were already over here in North America. I showed you that Muslim Moors were over here in the 1400s in the colonies. Now I'm showing you these companies who are going to get together. Think of these companies as a hedge fund, a hedge group, right? The Virginia Company, you're going to have, I'll just show you. The Virginia Company was a joint stock company. This is where those bonds are going to come from. I'm going to also show you how they used to trade human chattel or slaves as mortgages. That's right. So when nobody hanging nobody during slavery, they just paid $16,000 for 14 Negroes. I'm not going to kill nobody, because they owe mortgages to those individuals. They weren't buying the physical bodies. They were buying the bonds that were attached to these individuals. That's why you will often hear stories of so-and-so bought his freedom. How did you? He paid his bond off. They were known as debt slaves.
Indentured servants. Yes.
Georgia colony was set up to be an anti-slave territory until later, when the Lord proprietors figured out, the royal colonists figured out that, oh, it's more profitable to have them as slaves because there were so many YT runaways in the Georgia territory. You have to keep in mind when those first YT servants came over here, they worked for about a year and they ran off. They were the first runaways. They ran to Georgia. Georgia wasn't settled yet. You have to keep it in time and space. How many colonies did we have in 1606?
One.
How many colonies did we have in 1779? We barely had 7, 8 of them. Like we wasn't even there yet as a country. Not even there yet. There was no United States of America yet. There was no America yet as we know it.
No.
Didn't even exist yet. That's why they tell you that George Washington was not the first president, but you have to be careful and judge the hijack and not say that supposedly John Hanson was the first president of the United States. No, he was the first president of the Continental Congress. It goes Continental Congress. It was an assembly first. It was an assembled body of politics. That's why the Prophet Noble Drew Ali tells you, you must take your seat amongst the affairs of men. It's just a body of politics. They got together like, hey, this is how we're going to govern ourselves. They came up with a contract or a charter, okay, known as the Constitution, and they agreed to govern themselves like that. Within the Moorish Science Temple, right, the sheik has the right to what? Make law and enforce law. That's all he did. That's why George Washington said, take the feds off their heads. That's what those YT Shriners did. Let me show y'all.
And they put it on their head.
Take the feds off their head. Let's put them on our head.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
That's all they did. Take this fez off their head and let us wear this fez. That's all they did. And they put that Moorish saboteur right there.
And every lodge is named after a woman. And
this is the 5-point star of fellowship: love, peace, truth, freedom, and justice. And those are the claws of the Bengal tiger out of India. These are the claws of the Bengal tiger right here. Right? Old man Pharaoh gave the Moors permission to come up and settle in the first place. This is the treaty. It's a crown on top right there. And you would see Medina, Mecca, and those noble names on those hats. That's what George Washington said. Take the feathers off their head. They won't know who they are in 100 years. So the Virginia Company was a joint stock company, meaning that it sold shares. It sold shares to the investors. The question, who were the investors? Who were the investors? Write that question down. There's going to be some homework. Who were the investors of those joint stock companies? They were called barons or Lombards. Who would share in the venture's success or failure? The company was made up of two groups of investors, the Virginia Company and the London and Virginia Company of Plymouth.
Didn't they call them like adventurers for investors?
They're just called investors, to my knowledge. Okay. The point I'm going to make is this: why you know now in 2024, America is a corporation, right? It's a corporation made up of America is just an umbrella corporation. Mm-hmm. These are still active baby LLCs. What y'all talking about?
I like the way you put that.
Come on, man.
It's like the umbrella and up on the umbrella.
Because it's exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. And we ain't got to get into what Trump is trying to enforce now. It's called a tariff tax or Dehemi tax. Y'all look at what Dehemi tax is. And the Knight Templars were the first one to enforce a Dehemi tax or a tariff tax. 1607, 104 English settlers arrived in North America and chose Jamestown, Virginia as the site of their settlement. The settlement was named after who? King James I, and became the first permanent settlement. Now let's go back to old James here.
I just want to veggie back off something you were talking about. I wanted to look this up because I thought it was so important, because a lot of times, people was like, oh, I'm going to invest in the stock market. I'm investing in the stock market. And something about the stock market just never agreed with me. And then I learned about this agreement that was made called the Buttonwood Agreement in 1792. And it states it was a pact signed by 24 stockbrokers and merchants in 1792 that established the New York Stock Exchange and the beginnings of the Wall Street. But it wasn't called Wall Street at the time. And this happened outside of 68 Wall Street. That's how they get their name. Legend says that the signing took place under a buttonwood tree, which is why the NYSC is symbolized by a buttonwood tree in front of its building. So I thought this information is interesting, just good information to know. So if you look up the Buttonwood Agreement and go into the signers of that, it'll also, like you said, correct you directly to the investors that's connected to those bonds.
That's important because I also start to notice something. I said, how did this passing out these charters and these land grants over here? Who the fuck gave them the? Wait a minute.
That was like one of my biggest question mark for years.
No, I'm gonna show you how they even got the charters in the first place. This is already territory. Remember, these are the Black Nobility family who was already tied to this land anyway. So let's talk about the appearance of King James before we get into his nobility. King James was known as a swarthy fella. I'm trying to pull up. Maybe Skynet will participate. Here's a better rendition right here of him. This is Charles II. He's next. This is his great grandson, by the way, James, grandson. This is the better rendition of what James looked like. This picture right here. King James had a book dedicated to him, known as the Helios Biblios. And at the time of King James in 1611, when the book was given to him, the Nova Testamentum, what was called the New Testament, was put together by a man by the name of Thomas Cranmer. Miles Coverdale published the Bible, but the main proponent is a man by the name of Desiderius Erasmus, who in 1516 put out what was called the Nova Testamentum. Now, what was so powerful about the King James Version at the same time, the Puritans were pissed off. The Puritans is like that. The Puritans were used to the Geneva Bible or the King Henry VIII Bible. So the Puritans put together a petition to get signed, and this is shortly after the Reformation period, dealing with Martin Luther, when the Eastern Orthodox and the Greek Orthodox Church had split. The King James Version was put out. Now keep in mind, the masses of Europe could not read or write, y'all. Come on. The only people who had sense to read and write were some aristocracy kingdoms and their children who they sent to the monastery to learn to be taught by the friars and the scribes. That was it. That the average serf at this time period didn't know what the hell the book said in the first place.
Not the Dravidians, not the Visigoths.
No. We have to keep in mind when this book hit the streets of Europe, the literacy rate of Europe was very, very low for the common folks. I'm talking about the serfs who were attached to the manors. Okay. Now that was called the feudal system. This is feudal system, feudal law. Like in America, we have feudal law. We just don't recognize it. We don't recognize the governor as being the knight, sir knight over that manor, or what you call state, which the word state is synonymous with the word nation. Right, 48 nations agreed to be one nation under the governmental ordinance department. God, you call it, right? So now these 48 territories are all set up as manors, and the governor governs those manors as the lord of the manor, and then he issues pieces of decree or what we call law to the sheriffs. That's why the sheriffs, they pretty much monitor the counties, and county means conquered land. And the police are just, higher security. But this is King James, a swarthy brother. Tawny is another word he used for him. Tawny. He was from the royal house of Stuart. Stuart, let's just look it up. I mean, no need to even play with it at this point. Stuart means black. Give me a second. Watch this. The nickname Black Stuart was given to Sir John Stuart, a member of the House of Stuart, because of his dark complexion. The House of Stuart was founded by Robert II of Scotland. Black folks ran Scotland. The Pits, the Jutes, the Kurds, the Pits were also black people. The Anglicans, and the Saxons, black people. Boom, mind blown. Thought every white did. No, I'm gonna show you King Offie in a minute. King Offie of the
What about
King
the House of
Offie,
Burgess?
House of Burgess.
Yes,
I'm gonna show you the House of Burgess all the way back to the Italian ancestry as well.
gotcha.
This is the Black
Is that
King.
from the Medici line?
Yep, there you
Gotcha.
go. There you
Gotcha.
go. But come on, I love it. We wake it up. King
Hey,
Arthur of Mercia was an Anglo-Saxon king who was likely a Black African. Mine should be blown at this point. If you know anything about the Anglicans or the Saxons, you thought they were long, blonde-haired people look like Thor. No, these are Black people. The Stuart, the Tudor dynasty, the
and
entire.
it's crazy because for imagery purposes, I deliberately put a picture out there. You know, you have to draw in the people, you know, in a controversial way, so they think, oh, you're not talking about your own people. So I was like, okay, the Anglo agenda, you know, founding fathers are founding thieves, and then also I was like, you know what? I got to get with my boy. I got to get with Ponder because he's going to really bring this thing home. So that way we can just take that picture and we can throw away, because a lot of people think, oh, the Anglo is the white sea people and the Saxon was the swarthy people. Let's bust that away. Let's go ahead and break the brain of that.
Break the code.
Yeah.
The Tudor and Stuart period end. Two different situations. Two dynasties that rule Europe over a period of 200 years. So this is up until like the 1603. This is way beyond 1492. And I'm making it a point because we think that, oh, once the Moors left Spain, that was it. No more Negroes. No, their counterparts up north were also doing this. And I'm showing this for a reason, because now we can tie the fact that King James, a brother, sets up the first colony.
I mean, we just recently lost our juice. Like, to be honest about the whole situation, we just recently lost our juice. I mean, I would say about what, 100 and some years ago,
if even that long.
even if that long.
The Tudor period began in 1485 with King Henry VII. I just told you about King Henry VIII, right? A member of the Welsh royal family took the throne. The Tudors included famous monarchs like King Henry VIII. Pay attention. The word Tudor means black. Stuart, black. This is the Tudor Stuart dynasty. This is the black dynasty. Everybody with me? Famous monarchs like King Henry VIII. That's the Geneva Bible. The Puritans loved King Henry VIII. Thomas Cranmer told him how to get out of his marriage. They burned Thomas Cranmer at the stake for teaching him to get out of it, because back then you didn't divorce nobody. He divorced his wife. King Henry VIII did. In Queen Elizabeth I, the Tudor period ended in 1603 when Elizabeth died without an heir. The Stuart dynasty began when she died. That's when James jumped in there. Stuart period began in 1603 when James VI of Scotland and the first of England, the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, black lady, going back to Scotia if you want to, coming out of Egypt if you want to go back that far. You can't go back that far and trace that back that far out of ancient Egypt. The Stuarts were interrupted by Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell interrupted due to the fact of King Charles II vacating after his daddy died, King Henry I, or got executed rather. The Tudor-Stuart period was marked by many significant events, including these different events. The execution of King Charles I in 1649. That's when Oliver Cromwell, took over and ruled for a short time period until King Charles II came back in. So what I'm showing you guys is, you ladies, is the fact that King James sets up the Virginia colony. That's why I showed you earlier that Moors been over here in the colonies already. I can go back to that. If I need to go back there again, I'll show you back over there again, right? The Moors been here. King James sets up how did he set up the colony? How did he get that? What are the qualifications for nobility? Let's look it up.
Bloodline.
That's it. That's it. They keep records. The bloodline. That's why
it's called consequentity. That's why they say there could be no corruption of blood. So when you take that Bible, this is the beauty of this.
Come on,
If
teach.
you have to go into any of the ship, aka court proceedings, and in 1992 they ruled that the Bible would be their authority to adjudicate on. So if you have a situation where you like, if there's questioning about your bloodline, in that Bible, it states that there should be no corruption of blood. If you have a question about your land being moved, I want to say in Deuteronomy 28, it says that your land markers should not be moved because it was set up for your ancestors. So that should not be moved and taken away from you. So you can take these same biblical principles that's why I said every civilization at the apex is the God principles. You can take these scriptures and just, hey, beat it over the head with it. That's how you get busy with it. So don't stop throwing the baby out with the bathwater called the Bible.
Listen. And I'm going to keep on referring back to the teachings of Noble Drew Ali. If you read them one-on-ones, they ask you to give me some descendants of Jesus. It goes all the way back to Ruth the Moabitess and so on and so forth.
Yeah, don't throw away the Bible. Yeah.
Our people don't even know that up until the New Testament, there was all Negroes in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
What? Yeah. YT people wasn't even in there yet.
They're talking about your lineage.
They show up later.
Yeah, that's why it's called the Torah. They're talking about you.
That's why the Hebrew Israelites, when I've seen them in Atlanta, I mean, I kind of tried to debate them a couple times. I ain't gonna lie to you, but when I didn't need anything, I remember they was in not Little 5 Points, by the West End Mall in Atlanta on the corner, maybe like four or five of them out there. I had on all my Moorish garbs. I just went and just stood post. It was like, what you doing? I'm like, man, anybody gonna touch y'all? It's like, right on. You know what I'm saying? Like, nah, because I know who y'all are. I'm not gonna debate with y'all no more. I know who we are to y'all. Like, I know who we all are right now. So if anything, I'm gonna stand post and try to reach these NBCs walking around with their pants hanging down. But anyway, the Tudor and Stuart period dynasty that ruled over Europe for 200 years. Make note of that. Make note of the time period. 1485. We know about what? Not even 10 years. 8 years later, the Moors are kicked out of Spain. But in 1603, we're still ruling Europe, England. 1603 to 1660, and so on and so forth. 1485, 1649. And not only are we ruling Europe or England, we also established the first colony successfully, known as the Virginia colony. Right? Let's go to the next colony, to the next situation.
We're 2 hours into this. Let's get those likes up, get that algorithm going. So one of the things that only way we're going to be able to really be able to spread this information out is this algorithm falls within the people spectrum that needs to get this information. So go ahead
and
hit that like button. It don't cost you anything, support the channels. I know our brother's going to put his information up for his Cash App. The Cash App for Just Another Messenger is $ Just Another Messenger. And brother, you're going to put your information up for how you support M.O.I podcast as well.
Oh yeah, they already know.
Yeah, a lot of work. No, put it up. not just for your side, for my side as well. Hey.
Well, for the marquee, that's over on your control side. What I could do is put it.
Okay.
I could put it in the chat.
Yeah, put it in the chat and I'll put it on the scroll.
Yeah, I put up in the chat for you real quick.
Okay.
I was like,
yeah, let's get them.
Because I'm looking. I'm looking who in the chat right now, and a lot of them are my disciples and master students tapping in there. I appreciate y'all for showing up. Appreciate y'all.
Yeah, I'm Tamarell. Some know me. I'm a familiar face to some and new to others. I'm coming back into teaching. Like I said, brother Ponder and I, we have had the opportunity. I've had the opportunity to be at one of his events and speak at one of his events, and it's just great to be able to come back. There's not a lot of teaching, especially it's coming from, the Moabitist side. So I'm exactly to be back in the fold and to help out in this great awakening. I think that was the name of the event, right?
Yep.
The Great Awakening.
Now you guys will see her over on Crumb TV soon. I'm gonna circle back with you for a date and bring you over there.
Hey,
to our joint and let you throw down too.
I'm for it.
We talked about King James, the black swarthy brother, nobility family. We talked about King James already, right? Let's go to his one of his descendants. We're talking about the Royal African Company. Write down the Royal African Company. Now, outside of the Royal African Company, there are about 7 other companies. Notice they're saying companies. All of you entrepreneurs out there, legitimately got your LLC. I got my EIN, and like myself, I'm doing contractual work on sam.gov. So not only do I have an EIN, I have a cage number and everything else.
Your unique identifier.
Come on now. Listen, I better quit playing with it. So if you know, by establishing your LLC as a entrepreneur, you have a company now, you have a EIN, right? Anything you do under that business name is traced back to the EIN, not to your SSN. So it won't go back to you. It goes back to the company. Notice I've shown you already the Virginia company. Write that down. Now I'm showing you the Royal African Company. Let's go take a peek at who runs this right here, because the Virginia company was under King James.
Okay, before you go, I'm gonna just pause you for 1 second, because I must say this, because one of the things that's under attack with the LLC is that beneficiary information, BIO, that the FinCEN is trying to push for companies to fill out, which it would attach the creator to the creature. Now, if you look, please do not fill that out, because that did not pass law. When I say pass law, it went through the House. It only passed the House. It did not pass the Senate. It was never signed. Sleepy Joe's not going to sign it. Sleepy Joe is out of here. So with that being said, in the Alabama courts, it was ruled unconstitutional, but they're saying we're going to push it anyway. So if you look up, there's a case law, NASB, National Association of Small Business, sued them in the Alabama courts versus Yellen. Yellen is the Secretary of Treasury. Look up that case law, and that'll have you that. But then there's a little caveat they put in there saying, well, you know what? We know we told NSBA that it's unconstitutional, but we're going to still push it out anyway to all the other business so they can go ahead and fill it out. Do not attach yourself to a creature, because what they're trying to do is double back on anyone that may have filled out PPP incorrectly. Got to remember, Biden he asked for 10 years to be able to prosecute. He asked for a non-pro-tunc adjudication to happen in the future to correct past. Never seen that before. So people, please, you have your LLC and EIN. Do not fill out that document. It's not law. It's not law. It's not law in the jurisdiction. You can look it up for yourself. So go ahead.
Teach. So the Royal African Company, LLC, Incorporated, the Royal African Company was a British trading company that was a major player in the transatlantic slave trade. Everybody write down RAC, major player. What does it mean to be a major player? If I say that Sister L is a major player when it comes to such and such, she's probably one of the top persons in that particular profession, if we can say that. So the Royal African Company was a major player. Remember earlier I showed you Queen Nzinga. We talked about Alfonso. I haven't showed you any YT people yet. I haven't showed you not one yet, and I can keep going for 3 or more hours and not show you not one yet, and talk about everything that you've been taught about the Atlantic slave trade, so on and so forth. The RAC was established in 1660 by who? Charles II in the city of London merchants. It was originally called the Company of Royal Adventurers Trading to Africa. Ooh. What was the purpose? The RAC purpose was to exploit the gold fields of Africa and trade along the West African coast. Monopolies. The RAC held a monopoly in the English trade with the West Africans in 1698, when all the Englishmen were allowed to trade in slaves. The RAC ships more enslaved Africans to America than any other institution during the transatlantic slave trade. We can stop the conversation right there for a second. They shipped so many out of Africa. They won the prize for it. It was ran by King Charles II. Let's talk about him for a second.
They
Who
were
was King
recruiters of
Charles
the
II?
year.
Who, who was this black noble brother who was trading other people of African descent? This is King Charles II. I'm gonna show you what his mama called him too. You know, your mama call you black. You got to be black. Swarthy complex, prominent lower lip. A depicting in the effing Westminster Abbey, the effing is thought to have been made from his life cast of his king's face. Charles II was king of Great Britain in Ireland. Remember, his granddaddy was the king of Scotland in England. He was the king of Ireland in England. That means Ireland, Scotland, in England, in Spain, in Portugal were all ran by black people. Whether you want to call them Moors, you want to call them Swarthy, you want to call them Stewarts, you want to call them Tudors, whatever you want to call them. People of color was running the whole entire plate. But these people was unlikened to the people in Africa. The people in Africa, they didn't give two, like, why would we care about them? Why y'all caring about them in North America? They don't care about y'all. They carried this attitude of, hey, whatever. Hey, they're not our people. These were royal aristocrats. These were the boulets of their time. The same way LeBron and Oprah don't really rock with the regular folks. This is real shit.
You know, it's funny because I
The
have my
same way
notes right here, and I was like, I think we'll probably have to, revisit this again to kind of go on, because I was like, the Black Boule and his connection to Black nobility, because that's
they're
what
the
we
same
experienced.
bloodline, sis. Same
Right,
bloodline.
same bloodline. So
I
when
can
you
show you.
have the Democratic Party and they called out all the blue Boule to get in formation and get in line to fight for the Kamala campaign, I was like, boy, look at them Boulets. They are doing their job.
They didn't have a choice.
They are on it.
They have a choice.
Yeah.
Charles II was king of Great Britain and Ireland. So we know that Great Britain, Ireland, and Scotland were all ran by black nobility. Let's just be clear on that. From 1660 to 1685, his reign was marked by the rise of the British colonization and trade in America, India, and East Indies. That's a whole other conversation about the East Indies coming to America. He founded the Royal Society in 1660. His peaceful and tolerant reign earned him the nickname Merry Monarch. There has not yet been a black king of England or Great Britain or the UK. King Charles was sometimes referred to as the black boy. Dodge the hijack, because I just showed you King Offie. I'll show you more. The whole Black Royal Society. We haven't even got the Queen Charlotte yet. We haven't got the Queen Charlotte because he hasn't signed up Carolina yet. He's gonna set up Carolina in a second. His great granddaddy set up the Virginia colony territory. He comes down a little bit more, sets up the Carolina. Then their descent cousin George sets up the Georgia. So a lot of this conversation about American Indians and wars and what's it called? Trail of Tears and the resettlement under the what was known as the Special Field Order Number 15. Y'all call it 40 Acres and a Mule. All this allocations of relocating these individuals will only happen in the Southeast region. That's why those Indians out on the West, they don't have a history.
Now, someone would see this and they would formulate an entire argument like, no, they said there was not any black king of England. We talked about time and space of language in the context of the words that were, you got to dodge hijack, and the words were used. So in that time period where, the word was swarty, or, there wasn't the word black, BLACK, is a new, that did not come into effect until what, like the 1600s?
Well, yeah, but then those who want to make that argument about the word black, why they're trying to be so scholarly. Ask them the etymology of the word black. It means pale. It
Right,
means
pale.
white. It
Well,
means
the origin of it is Blake. So
blanc.
that they would have never used the word Blake to identify the hue of someone. It would have been swarthy complexion, you
Well,
know.
hold on. Let's
So,
let's,
so like,
let's do a point of correction real quick though. They
mhm.
would have called themselves black because black means blanc. Blanc means pale. These are let me show you. These are the mulattoes. They
Oh,
were mulatto.
gotcha.
They weren't black like we
We
are.
are, yes.
They were olive hue.
Hmm.
That's why they tell you the Moors came in different colors. They came in dark olive. They came in green olive. That's why the Italians of the Medici family you named earlier, those were olive hue people. They were
Yes.
referred to as black, but they were actually mulatto. And there's a whole thing behind mulattoes in the Spanish colonies in South America and the Maroons. And
I
then they
forget
come,
about the mulattoes.
and then when they come to New Orleans as Criolla,
Yola. Yes.
not Creole. I'm gonna show you the Criolla individual too. The Criollas was an amalgamation as well. So these just these these are just think of James and Charles and everybody as the black boule of the 16th and 17th century. That's all you got to put in your head. These are the black boule Negroes. Yes, Charles II's mother, Queen Henrietta Maria, once called him dark and ashamed of him. In a letter to her friend, Descent George, she wrote, "I will send you his portrait as soon as he's a little fairer color. For at the present, he's so dark that I'm ashamed of him."
Mm.
These are mulattoes. That's why Charlotte they stay out the sun. Like, oh, get too dark. Henrietta Maria, like the black girl just married the white boy over there recently.
Megan,
Yeah,
yeah.
Megan. Like Megan. Megan too
Mhm.
dark. Megan would be swarthy to them. She's too dark. However, Henrietta Maria was queen consort to Charles I and the mother of both Charles and James. She was the youngest daughter of the French king Henry IV and Maria who?
Medici.
Come on now. He had black dark eyes, fair hair, had paler eyes, his slight olive cast skin. They inherited from his what? Italian grandmother. Who's Italian grandmother?
Marie Medici.
His nickname was what?
Black boy.
Come on, man. Quit playing. Now Charles is gonna set up
So, do you think that bloodline of that banking family continue on to this day? Because you know how a lot of times they change the names and things of that nature. The bloodline of Medici that once reigned in the Florence, Italy area. Do you think that bloodline still rule in the banking industry today?
absolutely.
Okay.
But see, we gotta the American Negro is so hard up to associate themselves with anything that we'll attach ourselves to anything. That question you just asked ain't got nothing to do with American Black Negroes. They
No.
would not dare dirty their bloodline up with our. The American Negro is a created creature. I got to let's come on that too. Like we're a created species. We're not even pure in our essence when it comes to our bloodline. I can prove that. All right. Yeah, we
I mean,
belong
I
to
can
certain
understand that
tribes.
because there was so much traveling and coming in, and I can see that trend. I can see that taking place.
Yeah, just a whole new creature. 1663, King Charles named the 8th English nobles Lord Proprietors of the Carolina colony. 1607, his granddaddy sets up the Jamestown colony. 1663, he sets up the Carolina colony along the East Coast. That's why they show you in history dealing with Europe. The Europeans settled the East Coast of America, right? They don't teach you about the Spaniards who came prior, and now the Spaniards been over here since the 1490s. This is 16. Spaniards got about 200 something years over on the Europeans at this point. Easy. Which included present-day South Carolina as a reward for their assistance in helping him regain the throne. Remember, King Charles II had to regain the throne after his father had died. Mr. Cromwell, I showed you earlier, took over as a Lord Proprietor. These men right here, the Earl, the Duke, the Earl, so on and so forth, Sir George, Sir William, Sir John, these noblemen helped hold down the fort to get Charles II back in power. The Lord proprietors were given authority to govern colonies, distribute land, collect taxes and duties. They also had the power to establish civil structure, maintain order, and hold game and mineral rights. The Lord proprietors offered religious freedom, political representation, and a large land grant to English settlers. The Lord proprietors gave land back to the British Crown in 1729 with the expectation of John, Earl of Granville, many of the districts and counties, you won't see the word city or municipalities, those were later. Counties means conquered land. Counties, settlements, body of water, and landforms in North Carolina were named after the original Lord proprietors. Put your name on it, you own it. Now, these original land grants came under what was called this right here. Let me show you. Head rights. Head rights has multiple meanings, including the land grant system during the European colonization and the right to share tribal trust funds. James Oglethorpe set up a trust. The Georgia, every state is in a trust, and you're the trustors. But you don't know that. They know that. No. We gonna do it for you. We don't want you guys. Don't worry about it. We got you. Don't worry about it. So everything that comes off the land, you don't benefit from it anymore. All the peanuts, all the cotton, all the tobacco, all the watermelon, the peaches, whatever the heck come off the land, you don't get a cut of it anymore because they are putting it in a fund for you in what's called perpetuity. That means forever. If you didn't know that. That's why when you get land, you have to get land in what's called allodial property. Allodial property. Oh, I bought some land. Was it allodial? What's that?
No.
Oh, God. Okay. Everything you're doing in your business, you need to be put in the trust. Own nothing, control everything. That's what they did.
Exactly.
Land grant system during the European colonization in America, a head right was a legal grant of land to settlers who met certain conditions, such as settling and developing lands. The amount of land granted was based on the number of people the guarantee bought into the colony. This system was used in all of the original 13 colonies and is credited with the rapid expansion of those colonies. You have what's called tribal trust funds. We won't get into that. Just showing you guys what it is. Between 1783 and 1909, Georgia distributed land east of the Oconee River through two types of grant: head rights and bounty, which is known as county. With both types of grant, the guarantees selected the lands they wanted. Let me show you a trick real quick. Between 1783 and 1909, does anybody know what happened? What year was the what was it called?
Talking about the Gullah Geechee War?
Trail of Tears.
Trail of Tears, okay. Well, it's part of it.
True. and in the Yamasee War too.
Yes. It's just started a little further up and made its way down.
In Carolina, right?
Carolina, yeah. It made
you see why what was happening in Carolina?
Yeah, 100-year war. Frame? Yes.
Yeah. Right. So now we go back up to King Metacon dealing with the Virginia Company, come down to Carolina, dealing with the Carolina Company, take it over to the Geechee Gullah Wars and the Yamasee Wars, and come down to Georgia finally when James Oglethorpe signs a treaty or contract with Chitamachichi, and then a few years later you have what was he then? Colonel Andrew Jackson comes in and invokes the Indian Removal Act as president and pushed them off the land. And then in 1865 they invite them back to the land 30 years later under what's called a Special Field Order Number 15 and giving them land allotment. If you had a question about the Indian Removal Act, watch this. And I'm only showing you that because of this land grant system real quick that was happening over here. The Indian Removal Act happened in 1830. Was a law. That means it went through the legislative branch of government that allowed President Andrew Jackson to remove Native American tribes from their homeland in existing states to relocate them to unsettled lands in the West. Now, just in case you had any questions about who were these Native Americans, were they Black people? Were they red people? Like who were they? Watch this. Watch what happens 30 years later.
I thought they was Inuit.
30 years later, look who they invite back to that land. Special, which is basically general order, because America was under what was called martial law at this time after the Civil War, was issued by Union General William T. Sherman during the American Civil War, 1865. The order redistributed What does that word mean? To give it back. Give it back to who? 400,000 acres of land to newly free. But wait, I thought y'all pushed Indians off here a while ago.
40 acres and a mule.
Well, we got to dodge the hijack and start correcting those misnomers. It was never 40 acres in a mule. It was never 40 acres in a mule. It was only 40 acre segments, and though they had 15 mules left over, the Union soldiers just gave them away. Everybody didn't get a mule. Now, this is 1865. Keep that year in mind. Watch this right here.
I know I recently posted, said, I'll take 40 acres in a John Deere tractor.
Watch this. Now, that's 1830. 1865, what else you got? You got the Freedmen's Bank. This is please pay attention, y'all. This is it failed in 74. $57 million in 1874 is about $2 billion today. This is what was in those black banks. So now you have all these free families coming from where? Confiscated land along what coast? The southeast coast. Stay with the southeast coast of American history. You learn a lot. Don't go out west and go up north. Stay with the southeast region. You learn a lot. From Charleston, South Carolina, Lord Proprietor Territory, King Charles II, to Jacksonville, Florida, that's Spanish territory, including Georgia Sea Islands. That Georgia Sea Island was in 1526, where the Spanish colony was, remember? In mainland, 30 miles inland from the coast, the land was redistributed, 40-acre segments. The order also encouraged freedmen to enlist in the military and allow domestic servants, blacksmiths, carpenters, and other merchants to select their own work and residence. Where did the slaves come from? Where did slaves come from?
Yeah.
Let's keep going for a second. After Lincoln's death, Andrew Johnson revoked that. They never got it. And what happened was, well, they got it for 1 year. All those look how many? 400,000 acres. Black families came back to Georgia, South Carolina. They started to till the land, started to grow cotton, grow tobacco. They became farmers, agriculturalists. Once Andrew Johnson, the 17th president, revoked or reversed that field order, he gave the land back to the Europeans, the white Europeans at this time. Those Europeans returned to segments of land where you see black farmers working, and under state law, they no longer own the land. Did they leave for a second time? No, they stayed on the land and continued to work while they're white owners who owned the land. Now watch this. Let me show you something real quick.
So the hijack.
Exchange. Spell that right. Exchange is, how you spell mortgage? Spell mortgage.
M-O-R-G-O-R.
M-O-R.
You know, it's late. That's M-O-R-T-G, like mortgage. Mortgage.
Yeah.
Dead pledge.
I can say more words than I can spell.
I know, right?
Look, yes, slaves were used as collateral for mortgages and loans during the antebellum period. That's shortly after the Civil War. Banks of Charleston, we still in South Carolina. This bank issued loans and mortgages that use enslaved people as collateral. What does this mean? You know what collateral is. I need to borrow $700,000. You got any collateral? I got 15 Negroes. Okay, give me their bonds. Now the bank owned the bonds to the property. So just in case massive, hey guys, we got to shut the plant down. These were plants, by the way, just like Ford Motor Company called plants. You call them a plantation. I don't know why y'all call them plantation. And the person who owned the plant, the cotton plant, were called planters, not slave masters. Y'all believe anything. This bank issued loans and mortgages that used enslaved people as collateral. In some cases, the bank took possession of the enslaved people when the loan defaulted. I thought they were just no, these were debt slaves. Southern banks, these banks would seize and sell enslaved people as part of foreclosure procedures. I thought the white master would put niggas on the auction block. No, the banks were selling them off. Just like every Saturday morning, every third Saturday, you go right here to Gwinnett County Courthouse on the court steps, and they're selling off property, lands, and foreclosed houses and everything. They had niggas out on the steps You want how many Negroes you want? Let me get 2 Negroes in that house over here. Here, the taxes over $12,000. I pay taxes on it. It's the same thing, y'all.
Same thing.
Y'all looking at slavery from an emotional perspective, like this is just business, nothing personal. That's
Or,
why.
or
That's
if
why
you do
white people
like
won't
Trump,
apologize.
or you do like Trump just recently did, and go ahead and bury that body on there, you good to go.
It's sacred ground.
Yeah.
Southern banks, these banks would seize and sell enslaved party foreclosure. Frontier bankers, these bankers would issue long-term loans secured by enslaved people. Second Bank of the United States did the same thing. Slaves were also used to underwrite the sale of slaves. U.S. banks in southern states also sold securities that helped fund expansion of slave ran plantation. If you don't know what a bond is, you don't know what a security is, I highly advise you to look it up. Now, the last king we won't have time to get into tonight, but there was King George, who was the third lineage swarthy king out of Europe, who helped establish the colonies. James, Charles, and George.
Now, let's talk about that with the mortgage situation. I always like to bring historical contact up into today's events because a lot of people think the history doesn't. It's just it repeats itself. No, it's like it just has legs and it keeps going. Like you're talking about these banks, you have Bank of Charleston and you have Wells Fargo. All of them complicit into. You have Chase. All of them complicit into this way of doing business with the security bonds and things of that nature. Now,
Facts.
one of the things I remember going to an event, I just called a NACA event. There's talk about purchasing a home and things of that nature. Now, one of the things I saw on there, they have a little footnote on there where they have what you call a $25,000 forgiveness, and I think this equates to the same credit that Kamala was trying to introduce, but it's already in place. Now, keep in mind that how could Wells Fargo be the underwriter of the NACA program when Wells Fargo is the same one complicit in the discrimination in bad faith loan practices, subprime loans? They were all a part of that. But yet now they're the number one underwriters of any NACA housing loan origination. And they put a $25,000 lien on your property that states that each year up to 5 years um is it's like waived $5,000 per increment. So that's like a credit.
Right.
So after 5 years of staying in the home, it's like a forgiveness of the home that goes away. So that is built in there, but no one ever pay attention to the front side of the origination where they just passed. I want to say 2020. What's this, 24? I want to
Yeah.
say 2023 or 2022, where they passed. Now you got to get into these legislation that's going on locally as well, and this is on a federal level. They passed the Affordable Housing Act, Affordable Home Act, and in the 5 footnotes of the act, and this has come from the crash of 2008, where the government has built in them a 1% appropriation on the front side of every house sale, which means they're going to get it on the front. They're not concerned about the back. Because think about a 1% origination on every home sale. That's huge. That's big. And you can't, so now you wonder why you can't get a 1% mortgage anymore, because the government has now built themselves in and they have that ability of appropriation of the housing that I think that goes on to 2045. Look it up. Look it up. Yeah,
That's crazy.
it's crazy. It's crazy. So you guys, you must get involved with what's going on. Like if we have someone being the custodians of the land, they're like the service provider. We
Right.
have to get involved to make sure these service providers are doing what need to be done. You can't continue to be the bun and getting raped at the same time. I can't, I'm not using that word. To be essayed,
There you
you
go.
know, at the
Essay.
same time. Yeah, essay.
Essay by these YTs.
Yeah, essayed at the same time.
By
We
these palm
must get
colored people.
involved. So when I sometimes you see a lot of people that will fight against the service corporation
Yeah.
and what they're doing, but your fight is in the fight is wrong. The fight is wrong. You fight the law with the understanding of the law.
Facts.
That's how you fight the fight. That's why I say the pen is mightier than the sword.
Mm.
So you got to get into it. And this has been some really great information. Didn't expect it to go this long. It was
I mean,
great.
listen, I mean, I'm on Chrome TV. I go
I
3-4
know.
hours. You know what I'm saying?
Look, I'm with you.
I mean, it's just like
I'm rocking with Chrome TV.
it's just like being in school and taking those college classes. Like, damn, class long as hell today. But those who know they stick around the whole live when I do my live. But I just want to put you guys to this one last thing. It's called the Peonage Act. Debt peonage, also known as debt bondage or debt slavery, is the practice where a person's service are used as collateral to pay off debt. 1867. Please jot that down. Penal colony is a remote settlement where prisoners are sent to live, work as punishment, often in isolation from the general population. Penal colonies are usually local on islands or distant colonial territories where escape is difficult or imposed. Penal colonies were developed by English, French, and Russian. And some examples include, of course, the England sent criminals to America until the revolution in Australia until the 19th century. This is a penal colony. This is a debt colony. Georgia was set up not to be a debt colony. Georgia originally was just for free people of non-color. Found it. Here we go right here. Refuge for the poor. We're talking about YT colonial runaways. It was also a military book from Florida, Spanish Florida, but this right here was the reason those YT runaways came to the state of Georgia, or the colony of Georgia, as a refuge. That was it. Later it became, known as slavery after the ones who had to trust say, we make a lot more money if we just enslave people. But yeah, I want to thank you for your time tonight. So this was amazing. I appreciate you so much, man, for having me on here. This
Oh
was
my
pretty dope.
God.
This is streaming over on my YouTube. So I'm
Yes.
pretty sure by this time tomorrow night it's gonna be well up to the 1.2 thousand view section. Tell everybody who you are and where they can find you.
Oh my God. I am Tamarel. I am back into the teaching mode. I'm just another messenger. That is my page. Just another messenger on YouTube. I am getting back into the fold, so my page is new. So please go to YouTube and like, share, and subscribe to Just Another Messenger. I look forward to continue to build. Like I said, I am a student. I am a master student of Crom TV as well as Minister Information. I mean, when I tell you, I fell in love with these guys about, I can't say how many years ago. It's been a while. I just fell in love with them. I love the information that flows and the correction in love, and to be able to put us on a path of enlightenment, because that's what's missing. I tell people a lot of time, you can have a movement, but just like you can get on the treadmill, you moving, but guess what? You're not going anywhere. You're standing in place.
Yep.
You're not going anywhere. And I prefer to be a part of a movement that has progress towards liberation. And that's why I stepped away for a while, because there was not that going on. And I'm at a point where I would not realign myself to anything that is not moving and stagnant, because we are a very powerful people. We're very powerful when we know who we are.
Right.
So I'm very excited about coming back into the fold of knowledge and enlightenment, and looking forward to sharing any of my wisdom with those. Now, one of the things you'll learn about me, I love digging into the law aspect as a jurist and understanding that, because I truly believe there's an unlocking in there, and there's a way of being able to provide the way to be able to proclaim
The
who.
remedy.
Yeah,
There's remedy in there.
yeah, that is.
And ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Yeah, and that will put us back into our, they have this thing, oh, sovereign citizen. Well, let me tell you one thing.
You can't be both of them.
You can't be both. Either you're sovereign or you're a subject of the sovereign, which makes you a citizen.
Yep.
So you can't be both at the same time. And there is a restoration for your sovereignty in international law. It's called post-millennium, which means that we of a people, we have not been restored back after the war. So that makes us still prisoners of war, and we have to get out of this war cage.
But
So
remember, the United Nations already guaranteed all indigenous people the right to nationality. Also.
exactly.
That's why you see Trump always screaming that he's a national.
Oh yeah. Then they say, oh, he's a friend of the hitman. No, you missed the you missed the message. Like, he had really put himself out and showed how the use of the judicial system, they can use it as a weapon, or you can use it for the victor. And he used it to be victorious, to show how you use that system and you work through it to get free. Because other than that, they would have buried his little butt under the under the jail.
Oh yeah.
They was ready to bury him. So I'm excited about this.
Thank you so much. I mean, I'm glad. I'm because I ain't made no political stance this whole debacle, whatever the case is. But I think everybody know I stand with Trump, and they know those who know who Trump really is.
I'm gonna say this.
Christ. Hold up, Trump is the Christ who will restore. Watch what I tell y'all now, because I made this prediction a long time ago. Crumb brought it up. I was talking about Trump maybe 4 or 5 years ago when I said Trump gonna do it with taxes and everything, and I think Crumb replayed it here recently. I'm like, I told y'all, because of who he is. You have to understand who his mother is and who his father is. Go look at their names and get a chance, and who his grandfather is, and who his uncle is, and the fact he set up Space Force. And Trump's slightly on Joe Rogan talked about his encounter with the Intergalactic Federation and their demands. So stay tuned.
Yes.
It'll be interesting.
And I'm gonna say this before I let everyone go. I remember now in Atlanta, there was a huge movement on buying land. And I remember years ago, I was a part of that. And I remember that Trump was that man. I mean, when I say he was that man, the teacher, you either took Trump class and learning how to buy property, move property, and things of that nature, and build wealth, or you took Robert Kiyosaki class. Now, I took both. Trump class was cheaper. His class was like $5,000, and Robert Kiyosaki class was like 10 grand. But guess what? It pays off, and it paid off really bad. Now you had what's his name? Warren Buffett. He was teaching about cash cows at that time. I know I'm telling my age. So he was that man that he would get people together in different rooms, and he was teaching this information. And when I saw how this man was well loved and well taken in by our people that look like you and I, and then when he started getting into that political arena, I know he made some crazy things in between, but when he got in that political arena and they was like, oh no, you know too much, and then they put the propaganda out there to make him look like a crazy guy, that's when I knew that he is that dude that's going to do what needs to be done, to set the captive free, to help set the captive free. But it's going to take not just him, it's going to take people such as ourselves who's on this live and understand the mission of what's going on. So I've been rocking with Trump, I'll say, since 1999. Yeah, 1999. And I purchased a lot programs, and it showed you how to get in them, and it showed you how to give them back to the bank if you was losing money, but you got your money up front. So yeah, Trump is my boy.
That's what's up. 2025. Hey, so anytime, man, let me know. I'll circle back with you sometime this weekend and see what your schedule like next week to get you over on my network, and we can do some build on law and civics, because I know your jam when it comes to law and civics.
Yes.
That's an area that I'm a little bit familiar with, but not too much familiar with, and I would definitely love to have you on the channel dealing with some law and civics over there.
I'm excited.
Putting us back in our proper persona, so we don't deal with the social curators and all those people. So you mentioned earlier about boarding the ship. Why don't you talk to us about that information about why are we boarding the ship in maritime law versus law of the land? So thanks again. I appreciate you. Amy Palm been rocking with us the whole time.
Yes, Amy. Thank
Peace
you.
and love, Amy. Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, y'all.
Thank you for tuning in to Just Another Messenger with your boy, Minister of Information, and have a good evening.
Peace and love.